Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. It's November 5th, 6:30 p.m. and we are mostly, all but one, here in our places, remote or in person, and we only have regrets from Councillor Longo. Councillor, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I see no declarations. We have a very limited agenda tonight. Council, I'd like to ask if I could have two of you. We have no delegations on 5.2, the Community Activation Grant, and I wonder if two of you would be good enough to move and second that. Councillor Knoll and Councillor Shih, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that's carried. And we can now turn our attention to the main event. The first thing is we have a staff presentation. Council's had that in advance on eScribe. And the public, I believe, will be interested. So when staff are ready, we are. Mr. DeMello.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. As you know, in developing the new master plan for parks, recreation, and libraries this past year, we've done extensive engagement with stakeholders, including our library board members, community organizations, residents, staff, and of course, town council. The Parks, Recreation, and Library Master Plan that we're presenting to you this evening provides us with a roadmap for addressing the needs of our community, both now and into the future. As we prepare for growth, it's vital that we chart a course that builds a strong and resilient future for parks, recreation, and library services in Oakville. The plan that you'll see tonight will strategically guide the town for the next 10 years with a planning horizon that considers major capital needs through to the year 2051. We're confident that this plan strikes a balance between community needs and the town's financial capacity to address those needs, all with the goal of delivering on council's priority to ensure a vibrant and livable community for all. Tonight, we're pleased to welcome Steve Langlois from Monteith Brown Consultants, who has worked extensively with our staff team to lead the master plan process, and he will be presenting the plan and sharing the important and exciting recommendations within it. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Burton, members of council. Can everyone hear me all right? Perfect. It's my pleasure to be here tonight presenting the Parks, Recreation, and Library Master Plan, focused really on key updates since we last met in May. Next slide, please. So the master plan is a roadmap for really intended to guide the town, as Commissioner Damaso had indicated, guiding the town for the next 10 years with that planning horizon that extends to 2051. There are a number of tools and tactics and techniques built into the plan to give the town that flexibility as you work towards that planning horizon, and the plan itself will be updated before 2051, so this is not the only time to unpack this, but it's nice to know where we need to go, especially when we're dealing with major capital assets that require land and such advanced planning. A draft of the plan was presented to Town Council in May of this year. Public feedback was then sought on those proposed directions, and tonight it has been updated for your consideration. Next slide. So I'll try to move relatively quickly through a set of slides that provide some important context for the plan. But really to start, really just wanted to qualify what a master plan is and is not. In fact, the master plan itself will and does employ evidence-based approaches to identify and prioritize those needs over the next 25 to 30 years. It seeks to improve equity by addressing geographic gaps around the town. It identifies growth-related needs, informs financial planning, future budgets, aligns with related town plans and studies, supports the town in becoming partner and grant ready, and is intended to be that living document adaptable to changing trends and growth. Next slide. The master plan sets the course, but recognizes that additional work will be necessary in some instances. For example, we know that there will be a need through the implementation of the plan to continue to work towards identifying comprehensive funding strategies to deliver on key aspects of the plan, to commit funds to specific projects, to address site-specific planning, consultation, and design processes negotiate partnerships or land purchases, and the continued focus around asset management initiatives. So it's really sort of, as these umbrella documents unfold, they do set the stage for further work. I'd love to say it is all here and captured in our 500 plus pages of analysis, but in many respects, it is the starting point for some more exciting things always to come here in Oakville. Next slide. In terms of scope, what we'll be talking about tonight, really three key things: recreation facilities and services, public libraries and services, and park facilities and park land. Next slide. The plan itself is based on a number of key foundational elements, as mentioned, trying to draw on evidence as much as possible throughout. It really starts, and I'll touch on this more in a moment, around our public and stakeholder input, which was held through various stages of work over the year and a half that this plan has been under development. The draft and the plan before you today pulls in demographic analysis, in particular growth layers, and how and where the town is changing, and then other research and trends. What activities are growing in demand, what other aspects of our lifestyle that Oakville is building are important and resonate here locally. Next slide. I mentioned public and stakeholder engagement. This has been an item that's been ongoing throughout the project. Our first few stages of work culminated in a survey, community survey. We had over 2,000 households, representing even more residents that participated in that undertaking. There were 6 open house sessions last spring that spoke to, in spring 2023, that reached out and allowed other interests to participate. Stakeholders have been involved throughout. And then most recently, the green box there, this is what's new since May of this year. The draft plan went out for some additional public feedback, garnered nearly 1,600 responses to a survey. Next slide. That survey sought to test and refine the higher priority directions of the draft plan with the public. It ran for 5 weeks through May and June of this year. It was promoted widely through over 22,000 subscribers to various email networks, marketed extensively through social media, roadside signs, posters, digital screens, and more. And again, we had nearly 1,600 responses. Stakeholders and other community groups were also engaged. Over 100 of them were given the opportunity to review and provide feedback. Next slide. Just wanted to touch on, at a high level, the types of input that were received from this. This is all documented within the reporting, but there were 31 key directions, really draft actions that were tested at this stage, and strong agreement was identified really for all of them. The agreement was anywhere from 48% to 90%. Really should bold the disagreement point there, because that was quite low at 1 to 13%, and then the balance of those responses were neutral. What we heard through the open-ended comments was varied. It really depended on many of these were localized concerns, but certain things also resonated across the municipality. Things like maintaining and expanding indoor pool service levels, expanding pickleball facilities, both indoor and outdoor, preserving natural spaces, improving playgrounds, focused look on library services in Clearview, and additional library programming. And it's not that you're not doing any of this right now, it's just, it speaks to the values of your community and the desire to see continued service. Next slide. So I'll get into a little bit of what we heard just from, we've met with the Oakville Public Library Board, we met with council back in May, and a number of items, and really just want to shine a light on the fact that these have all been addressed in the plan that's before you today. So we heard a desire to identify conditions under which lighting might be considered for selected sports fields south of Dundas Street, and I'll come back to that more in a bit. We heard about ensuring that there's additional feedback and opportunity for public input around an outdoor pool modernization strategy. That's been identified. We're asked to reconsider potential demand for a community center in Joshua Meadows area, And unfortunately, that's an area with a smaller population, even with the forecast, a smaller population that does not meet the threshold for its own dedicated center. However, we do note that additional community centers are being proposed nearby along the Trafalgar corridor. And we were also asked to, and we heard a bit more about this from the public, around identifying conditions where the town might consider a 50-meter indoor pool. That's been integrated into the plan, and as well as the delivery of potential need and potential delivery of library space in Midtown Oakville, Bronte, and Clearview. And more on that in a moment. So we have looked more closely at these items, made several adjustments within the plan itself. Notably for the first item above, their sports fields. The Stage 3 report contains a list of those criteria. Fortunately, as we continue to work through our research on that, we feel the addition of lights to more future fields in North Oakville will allow for some added capacity. The idea here was never to light every sports field in South Oakville, but rather to make sure that there was the capacity needed to address needs moving forward. So I think that's been largely minimized, the lighting in established neighborhoods, but there are criteria that are available for that. Next slide. So the next two slides, I have one here on recreation and then on libraries. This is where I'll probably spend most of my time here, and we can absolutely come back to this if there are any questions here. These slides focus on major capital projects necessary to meet the needs of a population of nearly 443,000 people within the town by 2051. We're aware that new population forecasts are now emerging. Fortunately, the plan's growth-related recommendations are all linked to population thresholds, not to time. So if you're growing faster, this can be accelerated. If you're going slower, it can be decelerated, and it all comes back to ensuring that equity and distribution, and that the needs are all tied back to capacity and population thresholds that are advanced within the plan. So it is very much a living document, and adjustments can be made if forecasts do change. So 8 different items on this particular list focus on recreation facilities. Again, based on that 26, 27-year time horizon and that population of nearly 443,000 people. Item number 1 is really beginning to plan for an expansion and revitalization of Glen Abbey Community Center. This is a workhorse of your recreation system. It's something that is well used and continues to be in high demand and will require a refresh over time. The plan itself does speak to some specific opportunities on site. This would require additional architectural analysis to further flesh that out. Item number 2 here is expanding the Sir John Colborne Recreation Center. The idea of adding a gymnasium and some more program space, again, is an opportunity that's been identified in the plan, and there's some preliminary concept to move that forward. That's something that we would like to see in the near term. Some of these items I will mention are currently unfunded. That's where your budget comes in. So you're not, if you're approving this today, you're not approving every project in its entirety. You're approving it in principle to be referred back to your financial capabilities and partnerships and other considerations that would go along with that. Item number 3, and this is in your long-term, your current 10-year capital forecast, is a new neighborhood, community center, and library in the Palermo Village area that's being coordinated with your transit village. Items number 4 and 7 are talking about twin pad arenas, and multi-pad arenas offer efficiency to the town, offer efficiency and convenience to users. These are linked to other recommendations to re-envision and reimagine your remaining 2 single pad standalone facilities in Canoke and Maple Grove. So not looking to necessarily add without some adjustments to the supply, but trying to get the town ready to make sure that these facilities continue to serve the needs for the next 27 to 50 years and beyond. So those items 4 and 7 are linked to that. There are no land, there's not currently any sites identified for that, but that's where the master plan comes in to plant the flag and talk about the need to do so. Item number 5 is a revitalization of and we're really post 10-year now, into the 2030s, revitalizing, expanding River Oaks Community Center, much like the discussion around Glen Abbey, and the ability to add a library to that site. Number 6, as growth continues to move north along the Trafalgar corridor, this would be a multi-use community center in that Trafalgar Urban Core South area. This is something that would contain a number of items: indoor pools, potentially a 25-meter 10-lane indoor pool for added capacity, plus a warm water tank, gymnasiums, fitness center, activity rooms, many aspects of which you'd be familiar with through several of your community centers. And then item number 8 would be closer to our 2051 timeframe, but still building out and more of a localized center along Trafalgar Urban Corridor North, Trafalgar Urban Core North, sorry. And again, that's need the site and a partner likely for several of those. Next slide. I mentioned libraries a few times. You'll notice that many of these community building initiatives are linked between recreation and library. We heard from the public that these are models that work really well, that they'd like to see advanced wherever possible. In some cases it's not, but in many cases it is and should be. So this is the provision model strategy that was presented to the library board on October 17th. Again, has that 2051 vision, population 443,000. Item number 1 here, and this has been an ongoing initiative and is moving forward under this term of council, replacement of the Central Library branch. And item number 2, this is, again, moving forward quite quickly, new library branch in the Trafalgar Urban Core South. This is something that's going to be in the base of a podium and along the Trafalgar corridor north of Dundas. Item number 3, undertake a review of library services in both Bronte and Clearview. So we've identified, these are localized areas that we heard a fair bit of public input on, whether it be Clearview and a desire for that facility to work better for the community. It's the smallest and lowest performing library within that system, serving that Clearview community. Want to make sure that's the best service model moving forward for all parties involved. And with Bronte, this is an area that's been, I know, discussed for over several years. Woodside is nearby, but not within, you sort of see the catchment zones, theoretical catchment zones on the map there, but still over 2 kilometers away from Bronte Village. But we're also seeing growth in the Bronte MTSA. So the draft that we looked at in May talked about adding a library to QEP, QE Park Community and Cultural Center, broadening that to say there needs to be a special look at this community, and with various sites considered, whether it be in the village, QEP, and more than likely considering opportunities or service in and around the Woodside area as well. Number 4 was Palermo. That's a library branch that's linked to the community center I spoke to earlier. Midtown. This is we took a closer look at this and certainly heard opinions from the library board and council, and as that secondary plan has evolved, recognizing there's no community core, there's no central public gathering place indoor within that community. So the recommendation is to develop a library and community hub that would serve as a gathering and meeting space complete with local library services. That location, that space model will be advanced through future planning. You'd likely be working with a developer to make sure that the site and the space is secured. But given the distance from Central Library, that was something that we reflected on and have now layered into the plan. So that was item number 5. Item 6, River Oaks, adding a library branch at that location. And that's in large part to help address a lot of the growth that's happening along that Trafalgar corridor, largely south of Dundas Street. It takes advantage of an existing location, builds on those economies of scale, and offers convenience to residents. Item 7, possible branch expansion. This is longer term, so it's uncoupled a bit from the revitalization of the Glen Abbey Community Center, but something a little bit longer term in the Glen Abbey area around a larger library space. Again, it's one of the larger ones right now in your system, has been recently revitalized and is working very well for the community. So that's a longer term recommendation, as well as that recommendation for a smaller branch library in the farther north of the community there along Trafalgar. So I know there's lots to unpack there. The next 3 slides, well, there's a lot more, and really we'll deal much with this. If you could advance, please, through discussion if there's any questions. I just really want to lay out the various park amenities and other recreation amenities that the plan does deal with. So we've talked a lot about community centers, many of which have things like indoor pools, gyms, fitness centers, senior spaces within them. But all of these are really tied to different targets, population-based, geographic, membership or registration-based targets that make these town of Oakville specific and flexible as things do change in the town over the next number of years. I would point out that the indoor pool target has been amended to make it more dynamic and reflective of really the evolving design of pools. They're getting larger, they're embodying more components. So that one's now tied to water surface, not specifically to population. I think that's something that's going to serve the town well over the future. Next slide, please. Just really advancing and identifying those planning targets and needs for things like arenas to sports fields, to splash pads. The sports fields and multi-use fields, there's a projection of 33 new fields needed to address growth moving forward. We use the term unlit equivalent. That number of fields could be reduced through lighting, where there's added capacity available when that type of infrastructure is included. That soccer and multi-use field would include things like working with the local rugby club to ensure that the long-term needs of that sport are addressed. And next slide just contains a summary of the several other outdoor amenities that you would typically see in many of your parks, from sport courts, to skate parks, playgrounds, and dog parks. So in many respects, trying to continue to maintain our level of service in the face of growth in areas where we know demand, we're not keeping up with demand. You might see some additional increases, and in cases where the current supply is meeting needs, we try to build that into the system, make it a fairly dynamic plan in that respect. So next and last slide, really just to wrap up. That's my presentation. Wanted to take a moment to thank Council, the Mayor, for your input and your leadership as we've gone through the planning process. The plan is really a product of locally driven needs and aspirations, and it really keeps Oakville on its course for delivering high-quality, community-responsive facilities and services. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments that you may have.
Well, you've got at least 4 councillors: Elgar, O'Meara, Chisholm, and Duddock, for starters. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton. Thanks for the report. Everything in the report is based on population projections. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not solely. There are several items. We look at geography. We look at trends. We look at public input. We look at condition and quality of existing. But in terms of growth related, yes, we want to make sure that facilities are able to serve the needs of a growing population when they come into your community, and that they're in place from that perspective.
Yeah, I noticed you kept using the number for population of 443,000. Like that, I guess, a projection, but that has not been approved by council. I guess that's why earlier on I heard you say it'll be based on the projections of population. That's what I just want to confirm.
So the plan itself, when I was presenting the maps for the bigger ticket items, as well as the summary on the last couple slides where it talked to needs, yes, that is based on 443,000. Growth-related items are based on that, but the plan itself has that flexibility. So it talks about when you hit 300,000, when you hit 350,000, 400,000, these are the types of facilities that would deliver upon those needs. Some of these may not happen until after 2051, or it could happen quicker. And it's all based on those planning targets that layer in population that reflects back on timing and geography and things of that nature.
Well, I think that was a very good plan you had, because say council does not approve the 443, it goes back in the mid 350s or something, then everything still works with what you're doing here. So I thank you very much for what you've done, for all the work you've done on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm just curious. Pardon me, struggling a bit today. I'm curious as to where the numbers of things per population or things per radius or distance. I mean, where does the pedagogy come from that from, or where does the the thresholds to that's what makes a complete community if you have a basketball court 1 kilometer away from people or a swimming pool. So you had a bunch of those slides about total population. Where does that derive from?
Great question through you, Mr. Mayor. So the town of Oakville has been doing this planning since 2006, if I'm not mistaken, and even before then. And many communities do use these planning targets. So we've been testing these targets as we've gone along with these master plans to make sure that they respond to needs. We talk to the public. We talk about willingness to travel, how far, how long they want to go for certain things. Different items, different amenities have different catchment areas. If you want something that's more of a local park amenity, like a playground, we know that's going to be a smaller circle. We know the bigger ticket, our higher order facilities, like indoor pools, are going to be a greater willingness to travel. So we look at your current level of service. We look at the current level of service in other benchmark communities. So what's being offered in Mississauga, Burlington, Milton, and others. How does the town stack up against that? And we rate that against what the community has said their satisfaction is with, say, the current level of participation. So there's no one proven metric that works for every community across the province. These are made in Oakville, but tested against other communities to arrive at them.
So can we know how we stack up against some of the other communities with regards to what the population proportions are or radius? Because I mean, I agree with you that speaks to the service level that we have here in Oakville, and obviously that's up to us to decide if those numbers are good enough or if those facilities are good enough for the distance or the volume of people. And I guess where I'm going with that. Is we do have island communities. I know councillors in Ward 3 know this very well with Clearview. It's the same thing with us in Lakeshore Woods, where they're hived away, and there's nothing over there, and there's no population growth which is going to make them meet these targets because they're pretty much built out unless we start stacking on top of them. So. So what do we do for these sort of like enclave areas? Where they might not hit those slides that you brought up on slide 13, 14, 15 with regards to population or areas, but how are we looking to address maybe their needs and where they might be left behind, knowing full well that we can't change our service levels for the whole town, but we have to recognize these enclave areas.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will point out before we get started that there are there's an appendix in the summary document. There's a column that talks about that benchmarking rate. So we've looked at area municipalities so you can see how you do stack up if you're interested there. And we can direct you to page 78, at least on my summary document. That's where that starts if you're interested. In terms of island communities, you're never going to be able to provide, say, one community center for every 45,000 in a defined area. There's some, there's flexibility in that. But when you're dealing with areas that are a lower population that may not meet that threshold, you often look to other alternatives. Maybe they don't, maybe a community doesn't need a major multi-use community center, but some sort of neighborhood hub that can offer an opportunity and a level of service. And you tend to rely, you look a little bit more deeply at alternatives, whether it be working more closely with schools and other providers. You look across the municipal border because residents will travel. It becomes a matter of access and whether they can access a facility in an adjacent community to the same degree that they can access one here. So they tend to be a little bit, in those edge communities that we see, tend to be a little bit more grassroots and finding things that work well for those communities as opposed to sort of top-down planning where we do look at the map and we do try to make sure that there's a solid distribution of the key destination-based community facilities.
Okay, yeah, and I won't take up any more time here. Just with I think the thought when that community was built, there's going to be a public school and a Catholic school there, and that'll take some of the pain and suffering away on not having any community elements there. And over time, when we get left behind by the province and the school board, all of a sudden there's nothing there. And we had always planned to have at least a community gym or a meeting hall for residents or something. So. I think if we rely on future schools to be built, we're being a little bit naive with regards to counting that towards our recreational amenity space because we have no say on whether they're going to be built. So anyway, I'll leave it here, but I would like staff to take a look again at the Lakeshore Woods area because there's nothing in the future going forward for that area. There's no building, no bricks, no mortars, and there's one little strip plaza that we had talked about doing the same thing we did in Clearview about a little library branch at one point, and that just keeps getting gobbled up, and all the land around there is almost done. So I might leave that with staff if they don't mind coming back with something. But thank you again for all your work. It was a lengthy and great report.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Yes, the report is very comprehensive, and congratulations. It is a very in-depth report, and getting through it, it's like Christmas. It's like a wish list for the next 25 years and what we're going to put in Oakville. And hopefully, you know, when you said you're being very cautious about the budget and allocations to these facilities and so forth, the strength of this report is when I'm reading is on the facility side, and I want to speak to the service delivery side, and we'll just hold that thought for a second. With respect to the decommissioning, I use the word decommission. That's, I guess, my language on this one is the pools, the outdoor pools in South Oakville, which is 3 of them, and looking at Foggerwood in the future and what we do with that repurposing. Now, my concern is this: is that the comments were made that it's a trade-off. Closing these pools because of aged facilities brings in this word, and I need to understand it. Maybe you can help me understand it. Destination facility. Could you qualify or quantify what that means when you're closing down outdoor pools?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll just back up and provide just a little bit more context, if I could, for the conversation. Currently, the municipality owns and operates 5 outdoor pools. We've been seeing and are definitely aware of many communities that have been grappling with decisions around these as they become, as they need more and more dollars for overall, and beyond maintenance, it's capital redevelopment of these assets. So the recommendation in the plan is to undertake an outdoor pool modernization strategy. This is something that would start with public input and be built off of public input, but it's a matter of looking at those 5 sites and saying, are we going to continue to invest in these pools as they are, you know, which means continue to, you know, patch and repair tanks, lines, change rooms, or do we start looking to reimagine them? And when it comes to reimagination, to use that term, it does come with it possibly a trade-off. Or you know, if council wants 5 brand new pools that are going to last another 50 years, that's council's discretion and opportunity. Or do we look at consolidating some of those into fewer sites, which would offer potential to serve more neighborhoods in the north, say through a new pool that's somewhere north of in the north end of town, or not. So because right now they're all clustered largely around South Oakville and QE and so on. To your question around what a destination pool is, pool design has changed, as you can reflect on your indoor pool inventory has changed quite a bit over the years. The ones that we're seeing for those communities that are building new ones or rebuilding them, they tend to be larger, they tend to be more accessible. So they have things like beach entry, they have interactive water features. They serve a wider range of users from children all the way to seniors, and they become more recreational destinations. So that's why we've used the term destination. It's not just a place to cool off, it's also a place to just attract more users to these assets. We're seeing demand for larger deck space with shade. We know that the summers are getting warmer. We still think there's a need for outdoor pools. A lot of communities are not reinvesting them. They're making a choice to move away from them when they meet end of life. That's not the recommendation here. We think this is a level of service, but we want to think about that next generation of pools and how that can be best met in the municipality. So we're seeing larger ones that are just having a much larger draw to the community.
Thank you for that answer. However, I have some concerns with that, especially because there are aged facilities in established neighborhoods in South Oakville, and the elimination or the trade-off. Hopefully, these facilities will stay in the south because everything above is growth-related. These are coming out of capital, replenished in that basis. My concern is this, is like when you say a destination and larger decks and so forth, if we consolidate that, aren't we just now we have to look for parking, for people to drive there, large parking areas, and because we have a bigger pool? I guess I have difficulties with this one because it's almost a different mindset. We look to walkable communities, and I guess we're ahead of the stream 30 years ago when we had walk-to pools. There's no parking, but the service has been there for so many years. I would have some concerns about reallocating those pools to a one destination pool because land, as you know, in South Oakville is very limited. It would be a cost bearer to the taxpayers to look at park acquisition large enough to accommodate that type of in the south. Now, nothing with respect, you said the north, and I'm looking at the reports. There's also growth-related pools in the north. So I'd like staff to go back and review that. I think you're also be looking at, as you say, public input. I think there will be a lot of discussion with the public on those what we used to call walk-to pools or neighborhood pools. In my personal opinion, I think they should be redone, taken out and redone, and like you say, reimagine those pools. So that's something for consideration. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. The other thing I want to talk about briefly, and you did touch on page 30, maintaining affordable for everyone. We're looking at these multi-million-dollar facilities, and we'll be building more as time comes on, but I think the challenge we're having right now is affordability to access to these facilities for our public. I'd like to see some more in-depth work done on the affordability through our rates and fees. That is the biggest concern. We could have the prettiest and nice and clean facilities. If people can't afford to use them, then we have a challenge. So that's something that really needs to be identified in the next iteration of the report. And something specific, can you tell me why a 10-lane pool is a kind of a recommendation or looked at, what that's all about? Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. To your question, Councillor Chisholm, about a 10-lane pool. So we know you mentioned land's getting harder to come by, and most of your larger multi-use community centers are in great locations. If your population doubles in size, we don't necessarily feel you need twice as many of these large centers, but we want to make sure that the centers that you have and the ones that are to come are built to a capacity that can accommodate that growth. So one way to do that is to make those spaces maybe a little bit larger or a little bit more dynamic. What a 10-lane pool offers you is 2 to 4 more lanes for swim lessons, for master swimming, for recreational swim, for aqua fitness, and so on, all within that same tank. So it's an economy of scale. It's also something that we're seeing more demand for from a competitive aquatic standpoint. It's not a long course, but it's something that can be a sport-friendly and tournament-ready venue for many types of short course meets. So that would be the ability to develop that, expands your capacity, expands the types of groups and activities that can occur within that enclosure, and would be tied to more likely, a sport tourism strategy and the opportunity to do that.
Would you say that's a trade-off for not building, or excuse me, not recommending a 50-meter pool? Is that the trade-off?
I think where we landed on the 50-meter pool is that, and much like your surrounding municipalities, is they recognize that a 50-meter pool has a draw that's well beyond any one single municipality. It's something that's required for a more regional to provincial sport model. They have their limitations. They also have their benefits. We don't dispute any of those. But in terms of the types of services that your Recreation and Culture Department offers, the Learn to Swim, the aquatic leadership, the aqua fitness, that 25-meter, slightly larger pool still offers you the ability to deliver on that mandate.
Would you consider, when you put a 10-meter pool in, it becomes a safety issue with respect to 10 meters for scanning with lifeguards and so forth because the pool's so large? And why I say that, we've had a difficult time years back with what we have an 8-lane pool because of scanning and so forth, lifeguarding. When you enlarge the tank, it creates supervision issues and scanning and so forth when people are in the pool for recreational. Absolutely, it's fine for competitive swimming and so forth, but that's something as a challenge I think I'd like to see go back and revisit that. Are we doing it for competitive swimming, or are we doing it for department programs for Learn to Swim and doing that? It might be a different design, but you can tell I'm not in favor of a 10-meter pool, a 10-lane pool on that one. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Dunick?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. In regards to libraries, I noticed you referenced the need, and I couldn't agree more, for one in Bronte, and possibly utilizing the QE Park Community Center as a location or base. But I've sort of peeked on the term you use for Woodside, reconsideration. What does that entail? Are you reconsidering the format of what it provides in terms of services? I just don't want to see us close one facility to open another one, because I know in that area there's a considerable walk-to component with seniors, and there's 4 schools in close proximity.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation, I think it's action number 46 there, speaks to a review of the models in Bronte as well as Clearview. And just by the virtue of undertaking that local review in the Bronte area would be a need just to make sure that we understand the services, the opportunities, and the limitations of Woodside. And if an additional branch is developed, whether it be a QE park in the village or what have you, that there's any duplication is limited, and really that all sites are optimized. So no, the fix is not in on Woodside by any means. We just recognize that this is some locations would have the ability to serve the same audience, and we want to make sure that those decisions are being made not in a vacuum but with broader consideration.
Thank you. It gives me great comfort.
Thank you, Councillor Dunick. Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, great report, long read, but a lot of incredible information in there. For many, municipal parks and recreation services provide critical supports to maintain personal health and physical literacy. Access to parks, recreation, and library opportunities is a fundamental human need in all ages and stages. Parks and open spaces support complete communities. Loved the descriptions, and I think we certainly all agree with that one, and the number one goal being design, develop, and maintain vibrant public spaces that encourage and support personal health. You had us at hello. In terms of creating complete communities, which has been talked around this table a fair amount, I understand the cost pressures. I understand our reductions in our ability to fund these through various charges. How do we get to supporting the dense areas in southwest Oakville, southeast Oakville, north Oakville, where we're going to have very high densities? Looking at the Midtown area, we have Oakville Trafalgar Community Center pretty close by. I can't see any parents taking their children across Trafalgar or Cornwall, or for that matter, crossing Trafalgar to the east or to the west side. How do we, your report talks about we have to relook at services and how it works in high rise. What does that look like?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, big question, right? And one that will likely dominate debate here and throughout many areas of the province for many years to come. But you know, we can look to other communities that have been dealing with intensification, what some of their challenges and successes are, and you know, just to give you a few principles or objectives that we know you need to keep top of mind from those experiences. We know we need to take advantage of any sites or any lands that you currently own in those areas and in the vicinity. You know, you're not getting as much parkland in denser areas. So the parkland that you do already have or will have needs to be more as robust and as multi-use and as practical as possible for the people there. And you're asking the same, you know, that one small site to meet a broader range of needs. That's a challenge, but it represents a shift in how Oakville has been built in a more suburban model over the years. And it's not just Oakville, it's many other communities. So you're taking advantage of that. You're taking advantage of other sites that you have and making sure that the programming can fit with the needs of that local community. In some cases, it might mean more hours for certain things or having programming at different times. You're continuing to invest in public and active transportation to make sure that people can get to the sites. If they don't have an amenity that they need right next to their apartment building or condo, they can get to one within a distance. So it's really, you know, just as you design transit a network, you're also designing facilities and parks as a network. Not every community will have everything, but you have the ability to connect to other communities that do have them. You know, and just building on your partnerships and seeking alternatives. And you know, if there's a school, well, the town works really well with schools. You work really well with the public library and others, and getting more creative around those arrangements. Through the library and the Branthaven development, that's a large library branch that's being developed on the main level of a condo building. So that type of development is going to become more of the reality moving forward. And I'm sure a lot more of this has been fleshed out through your secondary plans, especially on a parks and public realm perspective. I know you have your Parks Plan 2031 that goes into this in great detail from a parkland perspective as well.
Thank you for that. What would a community hub look like when the Bronte GO station gets developed or when Uptown gets developed? Is it the main floor or the second floor of a condo building? What would that look like based on your experience?
Making sure that these spaces are accessible and are viewed as public facilities is vital. It really means you want main floor, you want easy access, you want lots of visibility into these. You can't tuck them away in a building. Then they become, you know, private spaces or at least are viewed as such. So Having that street level access is really important. It needs to be at visible locations, needs to be accessible by people and their modes of transportation. In terms of the exact operational model, we think the library is a great connector and has that ability to, we're seeing these spaces, you probably see it in the report, we talk about a third place. And libraries are a third place in the sense that your first place is going to be your home, your second place is going to be your school or your place of employment. And there's a lot of blending of that right now. In suburban areas, you have backyards, you have other common areas, you have larger community centers that you can go to. In denser areas, that third place where you can go to study with others, you can connect with friends, you can learn and participate from others becomes more vital. So, and they're free or affordable, welcoming types of spaces. The library offers that. And we're seeing the libraries being used more for independent study, for group study, for remote work. It's not, people still love their books, and we anticipate will continue to, but it's about much more than that. So that's why we see the library as a sort of the connector and could very well be sort of the lead agent on that type of space, but it could have meeting rooms, it could have activity rooms. If you want to have a public meeting in Midtown, that's the space where it can happen. It's probably not a gymnasium, but it could be. I mean, we don't want to rule that out. I think that model will have to evolve based on the opportunities that are presented in that community.
Thank you. It's interesting looking at the chart you had in terms of the number of people to achieve a community center, a recreational center, and how we can't hit those numbers anymore. If you look at some of the growth areas, Midtown would qualify for a community center and a half. And yet we're going to be working with hubs and the 2.2 hectares of active parkland per 1,000 residents. I can see how that has disappeared pretty quickly. With the people that came out and provided feedback on the plan, the group of people we didn't hear from are the people that are going to move here as we develop and buy condos and perhaps have a child or try to raise a family if they can have a large enough condo. Can you provide us what those buyers, what those new Oakvillians would be looking for? We know they're going to want a safe, near transit, a parking spot possibly, close to schools, all those good things. But in terms of amenities in a development, how the levers that they would need for that, if you could provide that to us, I'd appreciate it. And also, I think I may have asked you this question last time we were together in terms of what do we do with dogs? We could have, based on my calculations, 15,000 dogs moving into Midtown, into condos in Midtown. And the current, or the closest off-leash park, Post Park, is within the 2-kilometer walking. They're pretty close to it, depending on where you were living in Midtown. And it's probably difficult to obtain land to spend that kind of money for a dog park. But the only green space we're guaranteed of at this point is a pioneer cemetery. And would be curious if you had any input that you could provide at a later time in terms of how many 4-legged friends we can have in the area.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll attack that last one first. Action 71 talks about updating the off-leash, the leash-free dog area policy to address those dynamics. We know Toronto, Vaughan, Mississauga, they're starting to develop tiered models of, in denser areas, you have less space. It needs to be a different type of model with different maintenance and design characteristics. The ones in Toronto are irrigated because they get intense use, for example. Developers are starting to be required, or at least it becomes part of the negotiation of providing space for at least their tenant, their tenants that do have dogs. So there's different models that are emerging. They're not a one-for-one. They're like it's hard. It becomes more of a site-specific type of conversation. So we know that that's something, and it feeds into your first question of what are people looking for, and we know a lot of them do have dogs, and they are looking for those types of spaces. the one thing about denser areas is sometimes it can offer an extra critical mass. So there's some private sector organizations that can come in. You know, you think of the fitness space. If they have more people, that might be an opportunity. So you might start seeing more private fitness that can meet a level of need. Not always the same and not always comparable, but we do see that different opportunities emerge. We also talk about, you know, as private space changes, come back to that third place idea, public space needs to change. So you're really trying to make things as multi-use as possible. You're extending access as much as possible. What are people looking for is not the easiest question to answer. I think we look to our trends. We look to know what activities people are interested in. A lot of it depends on demographics. Are the housing units and is the affordability such that you're getting families, or are you getting singles? If you're getting a lot of singles, eventually they couple up and you get families. So it's not perfect in the sense of being able to address the wider range of needs, but trying to at least identify and address the base ones are needed. We also know that a lot of the newcomers to your community are going to be more ethnically diverse. We have welcomed and have tried to work to build up that level of input from your diverse communities in this project. It's always a challenge. So I'd love to say it's perfect. It's not. But when we reach out to stakeholders, made it a point of trying to reach out to diverse stakeholders, get input that way. You know, we heard from, say, your BIPOC community, demand for gymnasiums, places outdoors to participate that they feel welcome in. That maybe even in urbanized environments, that's a benefit as well.
Thank you. And last question, you talked about looking at the holdings that we have in terms of being able to make use of property we already own. In regard to the Oakville Trafalgar Community Center, we have the retired Oakville Trafalgar High School adjoining property. Did you look at that at all? I know there were a couple of other locations that were referred to in the report. I didn't see anything on the Oakville Trafalgar High School. Is that something that we hold on to until that Midtown gets going? Is it the type of space that could be redone, made use of? Could it combine with the current center?
The master plan does not specifically, did not include an evaluation of that specific aspect of that site. The accessibility of, say, the OTCC and the park at Walls Park and other items and other amenities in that area was considered, though. And it's one of those things where it's close enough, but your point earlier, it's not going to be close enough for everyone. So it's at the same time the ability to then build another community center that might duplicate service, we need to be mindful of that. So just coming back to making sure that Midtown and other areas are as well connected to Oakville Trafalgar Community Center and the spaces in and around the area, whether that be up Trafalgar, down Trafalgar, into downtown, will be important moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Council, when I led us down the path of asking questions of the presenter, I did not anticipate that every single member of council and every single member is lined up. And I have no desire to restrain questioning by council, but we have about a dozen members of the public who are here to delegate, and I think it would be a courtesy if we hold our questions now, give our delegations from the public their say, and then and perhaps their information can inform your further questions. So unless anybody objects, I'm going to stand. Councillor Haslett-Deal, are you objecting or what?
No, I'm not objecting. I actually was about to say I got 10 questions and I really feel bad for the folks who are sitting there anxious waiting to tell us something. So I would concur we should hear the delegations, and then come back to questioning, and maybe we could retain the order that we've got our hands up at currently.
Thank you, Counselor. So with that, I'm going to ask our consultant to stand down, but please don't leave. We may need you in about an hour. And Madam Clerk, would you call the registered delegations in order, please?
The first delegation is Chris Tudor Price from the Oakville Crusaders Rugby Club.
Welcome, Mr. Tudor Price. Council looks forward to hearing your information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Burton and Council. Thanks for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Chris Tudor Price. I'm the president of the Oakville Crusaders Rugby Club. I'm joined this evening by some other delegates from our board and a couple of our junior players. Many of you have visited our club, but for those that haven't, let me share a little bit of who we are. Of the roughly 3,000 rugby clubs in North America, we are proud to say that the Oakville Crusaders, or the Crew as we're often known, is the largest. We have 1,400 players involved in a wide range of rugby programs year-round. We're growing fast, and our membership has more than doubled since 2020. This year, our youngest player was just 3 years old, and our oldest was an impressive 78. And currently, 40% of our members are female. Our club is dedicated to sharing our love for rugby in all its forms and promoting the core values of integrity, discipline, and respect. Those of you who have visited us know that Crew has a unique, family-centered vibe that is increasingly hard to find in community sports. We're a significant force in Canadian rugby, offering programs across 3 main divisions: our minis, our juniors, and our seniors. Our teams regularly travel to and host other clubs across Ontario, and sometimes venture outside of Canada altogether. A quick glimpse into each of these divisions. Our youngest player, the minis, travel to tournaments across Ontario and kick off their games with an enthusiastic Polynesian-style chant. When they're at the club, they spend hours just being kids, roaming and playing around the 28-acre club grounds, while their parents often enjoy some social time on our clubhouse deck. Our junior players are not only fiercely competitive and more often than not the provincial champions, but they're also deeply involved in club life. They volunteer, they help with field maintenance, they pitch in at events, and organize their own team socials and traditions. Our senior players play in the top Ontario leagues, share meals, support each other, fill the clubhouse with laughter, especially on karaoke nights, and they're also deeply involved in the club as coaches, volunteers, and they're our future leaders. Our alumni, spanning from their 40s to their 90s, gather to cheer on games, catch up with friends, and reminisce about their times on the field, and many continue to play touch rugby, coach, and referee at the club. The club also hosts youth, school, and senior touring teams from around the world, as well as some of the largest rugby tournaments in North America. And beyond rugby, we're also a hub for the broader community. Nearly every weekend there's something happening: music nights, fireworks, socials, fundraisers, and even our annual prom dress rugby match against our friends, the Burlington Centaurs. We offer summer camps, off-season indoor programs, touch rugby, and even yoga. Our club also supports other local sports and community groups, from flag football leagues to volleyball tournaments, kids' music groups, and outdoor CrossFit classes. They all use our space and have become part of our extended club family. As one visiting dignitary once put it, our clubhouse has a 1970s kind of charm. We optimistically take that as a compliment, but the truth is our facilities are outdated and grossly undersized. They no longer fully meet our members' needs, nor can they support our growing membership equitably. We want to express our heartfelt gratitude to the town for your partnership in providing us with the wonderful 9th line sign since 1983, and for the ongoing support we've received in those intervening years. We cherish our club, our home, and the rich history we've built for the benefit of Oakville together. But the reality is that we urgently need more fields and updated facilities to accommodate our growth and fully support all our members. We're looking forward to partnering with the town to address those needs as soon as we possibly can. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Warren, our Vice President, who will share a little bit more about why we're here tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for giving us the opportunity to come and speak with you and speak to you about the wonderful visionary master plan that you've presented here tonight. I want to thank staff as well for your hard work and effort. It's been a wonderful and engaging, very thoughtful process that's led us here to this evening as well. So thank you to the staff and the consulting firm as well. Consultants, always a pleasure. Our clubhouse was built in 1983, and as Chris said, just a bit of context, that was a time when our club served 150 male members. We've changed and evolved considerably since then. So we serve over 1,400 men and women, boys and girls, people of all ages and abilities, and as the town has grown, so too have we. And as the town's needs have evolved, so too have ours, right? And so I want to underline that point, that fundamentally the facilities we have no longer suit those needs. And they are a fundamental and critical growth constraint to our club and to our sport in the town's borders. But there are positive things, and I want to speak in favor of several actions which have been noted in the draft master plan. So first of all, speaking in favor of action number 3, which is the proposal to develop a sport tourism strategy. As Chris alluded to, we are a magnet for global citizens looking to make Oakville their home and to enrich our social fabric. There are many tales I can think of folks who've relocated around the world and found Oakville to be their home because of this club. We're a magnet for touring sites from around the world, from the UK and other places, and for large-scale events and tournaments. And so we are excited about the opportunity for a sport tourism strategy and would love to be a part of its implementation and design. I'd like to speak in favor of Action 33, which speaks about the need for more indoor turf time in the community. The Pine Glen facility is a wonderful facility, brokered through a partnership, of course, between Oakville Soccer Club and the town. Its utilization rate, though, is very high, and there's no question that there's limited access for other community groups as well as to accommodate the growing programs within OSC itself. And so, again, a critical growth constraint I underline for Council's consideration is access for all field sports to have more indoor turf space in the town boundaries. I want to speak in favor of Action 49, which is to build 33 new fields in the community, of which we hope, of course, several would be for rugby, co-located around a new clubhouse. But again, recognizing that as the demographic trends continue and the town continues to grow, there is a need for more rectangular sport fields. So certainly in favor of that action. I'd like to speak in favor of Action 50, which is the proposed sport field strategy. And particularly its mention of the opportunity to perhaps revisit lighting of fields south of Dundas. This would help to increase utilization rates and bring on some additional capacity south of Dundas in the fields that are already in place. And finally, I want to speak in favor of Action 51, the call out to work with, for town staff to work with Crew itself to help secure our long-term needs. I would just nuance to say that not only fields, but certainly in respect of a clubhouse that meets the needs of men and women, change rooms, washrooms, and multi-use gathering spaces. So thank you once again, Mayor and Council, for your leadership on this file, to staff, to the consultant. And I'd like to bring forward our treasurer, Candace, please, to say a few words. Candace.
Good evening, Mayor Burton. Good evening, councillors. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Candace Carroll, and I'm the treasurer of Crusaders Rugby Club. I'd like to take a moment to share some important insights into the financial health of our club. I'm happy to report that our finances are in good standing, reflecting our commitment to transparency and responsible management. In fact, I believe we are the only rugby club in Ontario that undergoes an annual audit. This process ensures our financials are not just accurate, but also adhere to the best practices in financial governance. As many of you might know, our club has significant growth in membership, especially among young female players. However, our current facilities are too small to meet the needs of our expanding club and lack dedicated change rooms and shower facilities for our female athletes. This limitation not only affects our training and match schedules, but also hampers our efforts to promote inclusivity within the sport. With our lease set to expire at the end of 2033 and the uncertainty of our future facilities, investing further in improving our current site wouldn't be prudent. Despite the clear demand for modernization, we cannot in good conscience invest capital given the lease terms. Therefore, we are seeking your help in exploring options for new facilities that can better serve our growing membership and wider community. This past year, we have continued to receive substantial government funding and successfully completed significant capital project to connect the club to water mains. This improvement has enhanced our operational capabilities and overall infrastructure. However, we are at a critical juncture. While we remain committed to investing in our current facilities, we cannot keep pouring funds into a venue with uncertain prospects. Our membership is growing rapidly, and the limitations of our existing space, especially the lack of female locker rooms, are hindering our ability to serve the community effectively. We strongly believe that exploring new facilities is essential for our long-term success and sustainability. Our solid financial position reinforces our request for new rugby facilities, highlighting our ability to manage resources effectively and contribute positively to the community. Thank you for your time and consideration as we work together to secure the future of rugby in our community. I would like to introduce 3 of our junior girls to talk about our facilities. My daughter, Caitlin Carroll, Brianna, and Matilda. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and Council. My name is Caitlin Carroll, and I play for Crusaders Rugby Club. Rugby for girls has seriously exploded over the past few years. It's become a super fun and welcoming sport for girls and women of all ages. In Canada, tons more girls are joining rugby teams thanks to school programs, community support, and efforts to make the game more accessible. Our Canadian women's rugby teams are killing it internationally. Not only do they show off their skills, but they're also total role models for younger players who want to get involved. Watching them compete shows us how rugby can build confidence, resilience, and the power of working as a team, all things that help you grow both on the field and off.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to share to you about what's great about rugby, and that it's not just a sport, but a place where girls can feel like they belong, get fit, and learn to lead. It's inclusive, safe, and supportive, the kind of environment where everyone can thrive. But here's the thing, our facilities need to improve. We don't have proper change rooms or showers for female players, and that can be a huge issue. Playing rugby since I was 8 years old, and this has shaped me in ways that I have never expected. The game has given me such a sense of confidence, achievement, and well-being that goes beyond the field. It has taught me how to be self-motivated, not just in sports, but also in my school and my everyday life. What I love most about rugby, especially as a young woman, is that it's a sport where all body types are welcomed and valued. Rugby has helped me embrace my body and celebrate others, regardless of size, race, or religion. This game has given me such a powerful sense of belonging and self-worth, which with a bigger facility, more girls can feel too. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and Council. We don't like to change at the club, and there's no privacy. And while we understand that the club was built back in the days that rugby was just for men, we really need facilities that are more equitable. Better facilities would make training and games way more comfortable and show everyone that our communities are serious about supporting girls and women in sports. We love Crusaders. It's an incredible club. We just really need to improve the facilities for girls. We don't have showers and we don't have enough change rooms. Thank you for your time, and I'd like to introduce Gary Gage, our Director of Junior Rugby.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and Council. My name is Gary Gage. I'm the Director of Junior Rugby at Crusaders. The Oakville Crusaders Rugby Club is a vital pillar for youth development and community cohesion. By nurturing young talent, the club promotes physical health, instills discipline, and fosters community involvement. It serves as a gathering place for young athletes from diverse backgrounds to come together, build a strong, supportive friendships, and a sense of belonging. However, the club's true potential can only be realized with improved facilities. A centralized, well-equipped space would enhance youth engagement and eliminate the efficiencies of being spread across Oakville. This cohesive environment would allow young athletes to focus on their development and thrive. Investing in the Oakville Crusaders Rugby Club's infrastructure is an investment in our youth and community. Enhancing facilities will provide a safe, inspiring space for young athletes to train, learn, and grow, ensuring the club's positive impact for generations to come. Let's support this vital institution and secure a brighter future for our youth. Our Minis program hosts tournaments at the club during the season. Our main tournament is the Crusaders Minis Tournament, which is a fantastic event for teams and players from all over Ontario. This year we hosted 66 teams from U6, U8, U10, and U12 age grades, which equated to roughly 544 players and coaches and an additional 400 plus parents. The club was really bursting at the seams. We also hosted a Halton District School Board's Elementary Schools Tournament where 141 players from 17 teams enjoyed a great day at the club. Our program streams, which we offer, include summer camps and rugby and leadership camps, where we hosted 345 enthusiasts this year. For 2025, we are introducing a Minis House League due to the growing number of U8 to U12 members. We have a fantastic Touch Rugby League, which is a mixed abilities program for all ages, which brings the parents and kids together to enjoy some healthy competition and serve to remind us older generation that we can actually still run around. I'd just like to introduce Phil for facilities. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Councils and town staff. Thanks for, I think, extending our time a little bit there. We appreciate it. Of course, I'm just going to reiterate some of the, not nice news that we have. Since I'm the facilities director, I just want to take a moment and address some of the significant challenges regarding our facilities at the Crusader Rugby Club. Currently, we only have 3 fields, which are not sufficient to meet our demands of growing membership. These fields are uneven and not professionally constructed, making them unsafe for our players sometimes and difficult to maintain with our equipment. Additionally, our clubhouse is not connected to municipal water system yet and relies on a septic system, which significantly limits our facilities' capabilities and hinders our expansion at our current site. We also face issues in inadequate change rooms, as the girls were mentioning. Unfortunately, there's not enough for our players to go around, and unfortunately, there are no showers available for female athletes, which impacts their comfort and privacy. Parking is another concern. Our lot is insufficient and unlit, raising safety concerns and issues for our members. Access to our facilities is hindered by an unpaved gravel road, making it difficult to navigate, especially during bad weather. And our aging clubhouse is in need of repairs. The deck is unfortunately showing its age. On top of that, we have limited lighting. Only 1 field is equipped with floodlights, which are old, costly, and hard to maintain. To address these challenges, we urgently need to improve our facilities, and we propose installation of all-weather playing surfaces, proper lighting, and covered areas to allow year-round training and playing for games and community events. This will prevent weather from limiting our usage and ensure that our facilities serve the community effectively. Thanks for listening to our stories. I'd like to introduce Kevin Benders.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'll be the last speaker from the group. And I apologize if some of these points have already been made. I want to start by saying we sincerely, on behalf of the previous players who have been through the club, have appreciated the partnership over the years, and Oakville's been fantastic to us. So we want to start by saying that. Thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to speak. As we look to the future of the Oakville Crusaders Rugby Club, I want to share our vision for developing modern facilities that align with our growing programs and our community needs. At Crusaders, we offer a wide range of programs which include 15-a-side rugby, 7-a-side rugby, touch rugby, that caters to young players and those who are young at heart. We host summer camps, which you would have heard about previously, for local kids, off-season and indoor programming, and shoulder season activities. Our club operates at a standard that would be considered semi-professional in many areas of the world. We have outstanding players who play professionally who then come back to Oakville and play with the club in the summertime. Our facilities have not kept up with these players, however. In comparison to rugby clubs that are considered to be semi-professional in countries like Australia, Argentina, France, Ireland, the United Kingdom, they benefit from facilities that include separate change room for men, women, officials, on-site strength and conditioning facilities, athlete treatment and recovery areas, and community rooms for receptions, training, and educational events. These facilities also allow for easy match broadcasting and can accommodate additional seating for larger events. As one of the largest rugby clubs in North America and in the region, we envision a facility that not only serves our players, but also includes outdoor common space for community gatherings, as been mentioned before and has been highlighted in some of the pictures. This is essential for encouraging older members to stay engaged even after their playing days are done. We want our facility to be a space where families and non-rugby playing members can socialize and connect around the sport, because for us, rugby is more than a game, it's part of a healthy lifestyle. So we see the potential for our facility to be utilized as a training center for regional teams, potentially national teams, and to host international tours, providing a destination for international players to come and visit our great community. The Greater Toronto Area, west, including Hamilton, Burlington, and Peel, is a hotbed for rugby, yet the area lacks a facility where we can bring these communities together and compete in a healthy fashion. Economically, as mentioned, we host several large tournaments each year, attracting hundreds of athletes and their families. With a larger and more modern facility, we can certainly grow these events. In previous years, we've hosted senior men's international teams who trained in our community, including Wales, Ireland, Japan, as well as the Canadian men's and women's teams. Unfortunately, Rugby Canada has ceased sending international sides to Oakville due to the conditions of our fields primarily and our clubhouse as it ages. A modern facility would not only enhance our current offering, but allow us to bid for prestigious events, including men's and women's age grade matches, international matches, as well as senior tours and World Under-20 tournaments. In closing, we're excited about the possibility that modern facilities can bring to our club and our community. We look forward to working with the town to make this vision a reality, ensuring our club continues to thrive as a hub for rugby in Oakville. Thank you for your time and your consideration, and I believe Chris will be available for any questions that council or the mayor would have. And thank you again.
Thank you very much for the coordinated teamwork and the information. You have questions from one of our star athletes here on council, Councillor Chisholm, and another renowned athlete, Councillor O'Meara. Let's go with Ray first. Ray?
Thank you, Worship. Good presentation. Your presentation really fulfills the whole community of rugby in Oakville, and the idea, I think the word was destination and international and tourism, sport tourism, I think is all important for Oakville, and I think that's an important facet. Knowing the facilities that we built, like 16, and we have relationships and partnerships with the Oakville Soccer Club, we have partnerships with aquatic clubs. I guess the question I'm asking, this seems like a big challenge that you're bringing forward now. I know this is a master plan, but have you had any exploratory meetings with senior staff with respect to what your goals are, or do you have a master plan? Is there anything been done to this point? What you're asking for is very, I call top shelf stuff. And I want to know if we've had any negotiations or any exploratory meetings with staff. Have we had that at this point in time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have. We've been engaged over the past 2 to 3 years, talking about the need to replace the facilities and the potential scope of such a replacement. So we've certainly been engaged with Chris, Mark, and members of staff.
Okay, is there, I know it's not very specific what the ask is. And you're talking about washrooms and showers and so forth. I really don't have a handle on what your complete ask is. Then I hear about the facility side, the playing fields are not level. It's almost like a whole redo. And we're talking, I'm just telling my millions of dollars here. So I don't know how far where you think the town should be providing on this. Is it a partnership or financial? Have you made any financial presentations?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to date, we haven't. We've had some notional discussions around the scope of what the facility might look like. We've engaged in notional, sort of very high-level financial models, I think, to term it. We have in our minds a pretty clear picture of what our facilities need to look like. And they're very similar in many respects to what we've currently got, just bigger. More fields, a bigger clubhouse, slightly improved facilities, some various elements of, on-site strength and conditioning facilities, medical rooms, that sort of thing. Have we got to where would that be located? Exactly how many fields? The financial model supporting it? The size of the clubhouse? Exactly what the clubhouse would look like? No, we haven't. We've certainly engaged. And I think characterized overall what we think we need. But I think that's really why we're here. We're here to say to council, we've sort of flagged that this is, our lease is up in 2033, and we would like to start having those discussions as soon as we can.
Okay,
because
so
there is a lot of planning required.
Okay, so what is your idea to have, in your concept of your facility, what's the time frame to have this completed and online? What's your timing on that?
Well, certainly before the end of 2033.
I hear you. Okay.
That's the plan.
All right. So I would
no. Practically speaking, as soon as possible. We are constrained for certain, right? There are a lot of limitations in terms of where we are. As our treasurer indicated, we cannot invest. We can't solve some of these short-term problems. We can kind of hold the fort until such a time as there's an alternative, available. But 2033 is a hard deadline, and as soon as possible is a target deadline.
Okay, keep working at it. I think you have the ears of council because we do have relationships and partnerships and agreements with a lot of organizations. I know the town has helped out the Crusaders over the years. You've expanded, you're getting larger, so you do have a need. But what I do like about it is not just actual sport, it's a social component, and it's a complete community within, and you're growing. So congratulations to all of you for the rugby group, the Crusaders, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. I think you probably spoke for all of us there at the end. Councillor O'Meara and then Councillor Adams.
Yeah, I think Councillor Chisholm sort of was trying to pull the thread I was looking at. Like, what is that? Do you just need us to enter into a lease extension so that you can begin capital campaigns on all this? Is that what the ask is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor O'Meara, the situation as it stands is this. The lease for the land that we're currently on expires in 2033. It's partly owned by the town of Oakville, and the more substantial piece of the land is owned by the province of Ontario. And as I understand it, they had indicated that they were willing to dispose of that land, and that has not transpired. So we're sort of caught between, there's this 2033 deadline with no prospect of a lease extension. And then we're dealing with a facility that we can't expand on for a variety of reasons, not just the capital expenditure and the time horizon around which we could amortize that capital expenditure, but there are very significant physical constraints in the form of we're not connected to the sewage. We can't get planning permission to even build or expand our existing clubhouse. So what are we looking for? I think we're looking for certainty. We want to know where we're going. And we need, in order to facilitate the club's growth and continue to service the community and continue to operate as a club, we need to know where we're headed, right? And then if it's not likely, it appears very unlikely that the option is to stay where we are, given the complexities of the leases and who owns what. And in that event, we have, you know, it appears unlikely that we're going to be able to stay there. What we need is a plan B. So we're hoping that the town will. It's actually a plan A, is what we're really after.
Yeah,
Did that answer
I
your
appreciate
question?
that.
I'm not sure I answered your question directly.
No, listen, I think I get from you, it's pretty complex and interrelated. I was just looking for the first domino to knock over here for you guys, and if it was just extending a lease and working with the province, then, you know, we can maybe have staff sort of proceed on that through direction, but if it's the whole multitude of things, if you've gotta find 20 acres somewhere else in town, that's a much heavier lift for everybody involved. So I was just trying to see if you guys had a clear path of where you want the town to pursue, and then we could go from there. But I understand it's probably much more complicated than some of us get. And I know Tom and Natalia probably have been doing this for a lot longer than me. So I'll leave it to Tom. But thank you again, everyone, and to the young ladies who delegated too. I hope it's not your last time we see you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much for delegating and for your collective delegation. You guys did the best job I've seen in a really long time of coordinating a huge number of delegates, so well done. Anyway, I want to first of all thank you for your ongoing work, because it's not been a one and done here tonight. I know we've had numerous discussions over the years, and Councillor Lishin and I have been out to see you guys numerous times over the years, and our staff have worked with you numerous times on various things. And so thank you for being a good partner with the town. I wanted to say on the number one issue that's been coming up, and a number of the other councillors have talked about the land acquisition issue. Council has included acquisition of the Parkway lands as part of our strategic plan as a desire, and I know that we have expressed an interest in those lands, and we would, I think, extend the lease if we could, but we are not in a position to do that because we don't own the lands directly. And so that's obviously a number one issue, and I have spoken with our MPP about that issue, and so has some awareness of it, and I think you guys have also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys have also approached him about that issue as well. Is that true?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have. We haven't pursued it recently. I think we've focused our conversations, frankly, with the town of Oakville. So we haven't pursued it directly in the past year or so.
Okay, so I think that's an important point to continue talking about as a partnership effort to try to make that happen, because I think it would go a long way to helping to resolve many of the other issues that you've got that are facility-related issues that are stopped because you don't have certainty over the space that you're going to get to use and your ability to invest in space that you don't have certainty over. It makes complete sense to me, and I think it makes sense to everybody around the table here as well. So I think that's a useful effort to continue to partnership with you. The other question I had for you was about the indoor space. And by the way, whoever did your slide deck that flipped by those many photos, they're wonderful photos. I don't know who your photographer is, but is that you, Chris? I don't know. You did have some photos of indoor space being used at Pine Glen, and I wondered what time slot are you getting over at Pine Glen, or are those pictures that were 10 years old that you drudged out to use, and how much space would you want? Because that's been a conversation between the soccer club and other indoor field user groups about how much space could you soak up and financially support.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the indoor space that we use is Pine Glen. It has become increasingly difficult to get space in times that are feasible for our programs. You know, I think the OSC continues to expand its programs, and I think takes, you know, gives itself priority over some of those prime spots. So we're already very constrained in terms of the amount of indoor programming that we can offer. We can't offer anymore because we just can't get space. So it's all kind of on hold. We initiated some of these programs about 2 or 3 years ago. We've wanted to expand them, but frankly, we just can't. We can't get the space indoors to do it. So we've relied on Appleby College when we can use a gym. We've relied on other facilities. And in terms of what our demand is for indoor space, it's not anything the scope of an OSC. Right? We have programs that are growing, that are now are once a week for 90 minutes, that could turn into 3 times a week for 90 minutes. But we're not in the position to book out a whole field for 50% of the time.
Right.
It's fractional.
And there's probably a bit of a chicken and egg thing. If you had space, then you could probably expand into more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it is a serious constraint at the moment. We can't grow our indoor programs at all. We just can't find space.
So it remains then, I think, a point of discussion about the need for additional indoor space and how to create a partnership arrangement where multiple users could access that space appropriately and in a fair and equitable kind of way.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to leave it at that. I thank you for raising the issues and points that you have, and I remain willing and ready to continue those discussions over time and helping to bring our staff to play as needed.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Crusaders for the edification and the breadth of the presentation. Wait, we have a late entry here. Councillor Hazlet-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, through you. My question is directed to staff. It was a phenomenal presentation and delegation, and you clearly had lots and lots of conversations. My question that I'd actually emailed to Commissioner Damaso on the weekend is, we have a lot of items that are listed as high priority, and yet we have the Crusaders that continue to demonstrate they're growing, they're trying to be inclusive, they've got a commitment, and there's a lot of conversation. At what point, or what do you need to ensure, it is higher on this high priority list? Because when I look at the list, it's long, and it's not clear to me, how many more discussions do we need, or what do you need as staff to raise it on the priority list to something more urgent, given the lease timeframes and the equity issues that it raises, et cetera?
Through Mayor Burton to Councillor Hazlet-Thiel, that is the quintessential question for us, is how we now manage the workload priorities that come out of this master plan. So the first shoe to drop is to have approval from council. It is then incumbent on us to look at the short-term priorities and stack them up. Some of them will be driven by opportunity. So what's the most immediate opportunity that we can advance? Some of it will be outlined by our ability to resource. And some of these fall in a very logical sequential order. So that's a complicated answer to how do we manage our work plan coming out of this. But in terms of the Crusaders' needs, I think Councillor Adams has hit the nail on the head. I think the first shoe that needs to drop on this particular issue is some clarity around the land that they're currently on, because that's the lever to then open the door to every other discussion. We have had discussions about accommodation plan Bs in the north of the town, but those are longer range. And so I think the immediacy really falls to developing a clear plan to get some clarity around the ninth line lands. And I think that would be our first point of priority as staff, working with council and I think working with the group.
And so do you see it as one of the higher priority items? Because as you frame that, there's some that come easier, some that are going to come harder, some that might have resources, some that may not. I guess my direct question is, do you see it as a higher priority item, or what do you need from council to help with the prioritization of all these high priority items?
I think if we could come back on that, Councillor Hazathiel, because I think what we need to look at is, again, we've given some thought to the elements of this master plan that need to move first, because there's a concurrent nature to some of these activities. We can come back with some clarity as part of our work planning for 2025 and outline some of those things, because this particular issue with the Crusaders is something that does bridge the line between staff and council. And I do think it will require some council effort to get the momentum required on this. So if we could come back with some conversations with through the mayor and council, I think, and advance that conversation as part of our 2025 planning, that's probably the clearest path I could give you right now.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Councillor. Bottom line, stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is Harry Shea from the BVRA.
Mr. Shea, welcome. Council looks forward to your input.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and Town Council. I've spoken previously about Bronte's density and its impact on livability. And tonight, through that same lens of livability and density, which now includes 4 development projects currently under construction, adding some 500 new residential housing units in a 3-block area, I'd like to speak to the Parks, Recs, and Library Master Plan. First, closing the Bronte Pool at the end of its life will not contribute to the livability of this community. Choosing it as a potential new destination pool, absorbing other end-of-life pools, is not terribly prudent either. Why would we draw additional traffic to an area in which lack of adequate public parking is already a major issue? This pool's location would not be an ideal location for a destination pool for that reason. We would rather see the pool be renovated to include the latest technology available today, serving not just children and adults, but the elderly as well. The pool could become the new standard for not just smart technology, but incorporating into the design the adaptability for different ages and mobility. Second, what will it take to get a library in the village? Can we incorporate the need for library space into Bronte's future CPPS? Or should we be opportunistic and proactive now and not wait for CPPS in the future to evaluate potential library spaces? Why are we even speaking about libraries in the age of the internet and Google? Are they even relevant today? The International Federation of Library Associations have since 1995 been focused on precisely that question. And despite all the prophecies of doom, this has not happened. At the very same time, we are witnessing a renaissance for the physical library, according to Rasmussen and Jacobson in a 2009 Danish study. Speaking of the internet, quote, "It does not destroy the library, but liberates it into providing new kinds of public services, attracting a potential new audience," end quote. This according to British library architect Brian Edwards. Edwards goes on to say, quote, "We see a less passive collection of books and other media to be an active space for experience and inspiration and a local meeting point," end quote. The American Library Association calls this from collection to connection. These comments are supported by the Danish 4-space model, describing the new local library profile as a culture center, a knowledge center, a social center, and an information center. These are the centers that relate to specific sectors in the local community. The future library design for Bronte should be viewed as another public gathering space, incorporated into the library design, a place where the public can gather to meet and share a conversation, meeting in larger groups, or simply enjoying a coffee while reading. This approach contributes to not just the livability of Bronte, but promotes the village as both walkable and easily accessible. The future library must reside in Bronte. And finally, when we telescope out from the Bronte Pool Complex, we see the football field to the south, used for both Canadian and European football, and the baseball diamond. To the west is the Eastview Athletic Field, which the town maintains along with the tennis courts and a small abandoned town building. Instead of viewing these as separate elements of recreation or sport, we need to see them through the lens of livability. How might we reimagine this entire area? How can this space be animated for future generations, calling Bronte home? I'm not here tonight to suggest its future. Rather, I would ask that consideration be given to a future staff report for this area and a corresponding open house to be conducted to let the local residents weigh in on how this valuable real estate be envisioned or optimized for future Bronte generations. As we continue to prepare for growth, both now, which is currently underway, and in the future, our vision, our planning, and our commitment to see it to fruition will impact future generations. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shea. Councillor McNeese has a question for you.
Thank you, through your worship, and thank you, Harry, for your delegation. Agree with you on the Bronte Athletic Complex there, and that's something I didn't see in the many pages of reports there, because I think there's a real opportunity, as you mentioned, with the spaces around it and thinking of how those things integrate. So we've got the pool to the north, the athletic fields that get well used. We've got to the west, Eastview School and their sort of sports fields that we maintain, but at night is where we have sort of youth problems, and getting more eyes on the street for stuff like that's really valuable. Then we have some town tennis courts that you couldn't get to the athletic field from there without kind of going through a swamp. I wonder if we could ask staff if, as you suggested, sort of I guess it would be an optimization and enhancement plan for the Bronte Athletic Field. I wonder if that can be included, or I know it's been mentioned a few times, but I don't see it in the report.
Councillor, any two members of council can request a report, and the tradition here is the rest of council approves the request. I would recommend that you resort to that proven tool.
Can I do it at today's meeting, or does that wait till council?
You need to wait for council.
Okay.
But it's not that long. You'll remember.
Okay. I'm just so staff knows what's coming, I'm happy to do that. And I think thinking about it through the lens of this great plan would be beneficial as well. And just thinking about the neighborhood pools, so I know we've heard from many councillors, there's sort of the optimization of having fewer and making them destination, but with a destination, you get a destination parking lot. So as I hear from you, you're in favor of the walkable, community-centric, whether it's a pool or even Canoke ice rink. That's the nearest ice rink for us as well in Bronte, in Ward 1. You're in favor of the benefits of having something local? Is that my understanding?
Correct.
Okay, so I think that'll probably come up later in our line of questioning. And then regarding the library branch, you think that's a shorter term need, or I believe there's mention of a study, but when I look at when we'd actually have the resources to do it, it'd be in the 2030s. What are your thoughts around timing there?
Well, I was here last week, obviously, talking about CPPS for Midtown and that rather long timeline. So from my perspective, I'd like it not to be included in CPPS, but rather if we can, start looking for space now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. All right, before we resume delegations and questions, I have someplace I need to be, and it's not watching the U.S. elections. The next acting mayor who's actually in the room is Councillor Knoll, and so I would like to pass the chair to Councillor Knoll to see us through the rest of this agenda. At the request of the incoming chair, we're going to have a 5-minute recess. So use it wisely. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling this meeting back to order.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. I'm calling this meeting back to order. And Madam Clerk, I understand we have 2 more delegations to hear this evening?
Yes, we actually have three.
Three, I'm sorry.
Yep, that's okay. The first one is David Harris.
Mr. Harris, are you here? Okay, let's put him at the bottom and come back to him then. Who's next?
You know,
Is he online by any chance?
David Harris.
Oh, there he is right there. No problem. You have 10 minutes.
Okay. Acting Mayor and Council. I'd like to make a couple comments. I don't have a lot to say, but first of all, I like the Monteith Brown plan. It's very comprehensive and informative. And it's nice to hear that they're from London, Ontario, as opposed to Australia, like some governments use. My name is David Harris. I own a company who manufactures electronic scoreboards, and we travel all over Canada. So I've seen hundreds of arenas, gymnasiums, and I've interacted with all kinds of people. We've done new builds, we've done existing arenas, some very old ones, such as Kinnock, and we have quite a comprehensive array of experience and capability in that line. I thought that the Mr. McWilliam and his staff and associates have percolated numerous suggestions and ideas into a workable plan for the future, and I really appreciate the work they've done, and I think it's very well rounded out. Features include connecting recreational facilities and schools together, which is a plan many municipalities have success in enhancing their operations, so I think that's a great idea. Flexible planning in these buildings is essential because that's what's going to allow us to keep up with the various trends and the expanding populations that will be using these facilities. Also includes the retasking of arenas such as Kinnock and Maple Grove into alternate facilities without ice. That will require consultation with the community, but it's going to keep these buildings viable, and there are different ways that they can perform. In Brampton, for example, there's an arena that was first transitioned into a tennis court, and then an indoor soccer field, and finally it's made its preferred placement as a tumbling and gymnasium facility. I have one important recommendation to bring up before any proposed new properties or upgrades to properties are initiated. Please involve the personnel who are working there or who are going to be working there in all your discussions about the planning and the operation of the arena, because they have a wealth of experience and is so often ignored by architects and builders who come in and say, this is what the building is going to look like, this is how it's going to operate, and they don't understand how important it is to have the right turning radius for a Zamboni, which is not a very easy vehicle to drive. And so there's all kinds of things like this that these can supply with it. That'll keep the established operating smoothly and efficiently. For all the additional spaces that will be needed in the future, there will be a huge requirement for both available land and cash. This brings me to the reason that I'm here, and that is to remind everyone that there is a large plot of vacant land available that has been declared surplus by the province. It resides at 2551 Sherwood Heights Drive in Clearview, area of Oakville, and that is just south of the Crusaders Park. It has some obstacles, though. First of all, there's not the 45,000 people population level to warrant a community center in the Clearview at this time. But Midtown will be located just on the other side of the Ford plant, and apparently Midtown will qualify for a community center and a half, which I just heard tonight from someone. There's an ongoing investigation into the feasibility of building anything on the land at this location. I hope we can get an update very soon on the findings so far so we can move forward or just stop completely. Because if we can't build there, then obviously there's no point in harping on it. Finally, there's presently a $30 million price tag on it. So it'll be interesting to see how this price compares with a similar plot of land in other parts of Oakville. Since the land is surplus to the province, and there might be an election coming up, we may be able to get a break. Hopefully these obstacles can be overcome and the possibility of developing a community center in the Clearview area can be put into action, or if not, to rest. Thanks for your time. If there are any questions, available.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. I see that Councillor Hazathil has her hand up, so I will turn the floor over to her.
Through you, Acting Mayor Noel. David, thanks for coming out and thanks for continuing to speak on behalf of the Clearview community. For clarity, from a community center perspective, is the ask coming from wanting to have the kind of scale of community center you heard tonight, that the 45,000 population requires, or is it some level of change, adaptation to a building or the library in Clearview? I want council to be clear what you and who you may be speaking for are asking.
Okay, thanks for that. That's a very important point because what I was thinking of my group anyway is thinking of in relationship to this is something that could start off small, but we have the capability of expanding. As you know, that's a large property there. It's a big piece of land. And if it is viable and usable, and we can start with something small. Right now, we're talking a lot about senior centers and things like that. As the baby boomers pass through, then these are going to become increasingly important in the short term. After that, if we have these facilities who have a footprint on the land at least, then they become easily expandable and can increase to whatever requirements become in the future. But we can't ignore vacant land sitting there that's available.
So, but for clarity, you quoted 30 million. That is the current value of the land that the province in Infrastructure Ontario has for the land. Is that right?
Yes.
So in order to do something on that land, we, well, I understand your hope is that we might be able to get a deal. We have to come up with 30 million plus whatever the build out would be on that land.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
Well, one of the advantages of that piece of land, though, is that there's nothing on it already. So in other words, there's nothing had to be torn down, nothing to be demolished, which again is a cost. Probably what you'll find in most other parts of Oakville.
Okay. So I'm just going to turn to the question to the commissioner. Was there a discussion about the ability to do something different for Clearview in all the analysis of the different types of facilities or services we could provide?
Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and my apologies to Councillor Hazathil. You caught me in a sidebar conversation. If you could repeat your question, I'd appreciate that.
I'm just inquiring. Clearview has often, and as one of my council colleagues raised earlier, you know, it is it's an enclave, I think is the word Councillor Amir used, but it's a smaller population. It won't hit the numbers that you've got in this plan. Was there discussion on options that might provide services to the community similar to what a community center does or other alternatives that support a complete community for them?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's an excellent question, Councillor Hasatiel. And I think that the model that we look at, so there is a very distinct recommendation around optimizing the library site that's in Clearview. But I think you're referencing how do you provide service to an area if you're not accounting for a new facility? And I think the model is really to address it through partnership and through providing service, but not necessarily facilities. So you're looking for opportunities to work with school locations and accessing their gyms, bringing programming to their facilities, looking for opportunities for community space within any available sites. The challenge is the availability and the size of the population. So for us, the short answer is really leveraging our partnership with the library facility, which is on site, and looking at the school location as opportunities to bring in services and activities, as opposed to building a facility. And I know that's not the perfect answer, but it is the challenge with trying to meet a provision for a smaller community.
So thank you for that. Was there any, was staff able to determine how many town-run programs we have in the Clearview community at St. Luke's and James W. Hill? Or is that work still being done?
I think we've done a little bit, and I'm going to ask our acting director, Brent Copeland, to step in, if that's okay.
Through you, Councillor Knoll. I will say that currently there is more of a partnership program we are looking at right there. Those two facilities are used by through the community use of schools for several community groups, including the minor basketball, Special Olympics, pickleball, and field hockey. And you know, just following up on what Commissioner Damaso was saying, I think, you know, action number 4 really speaks to, you know, our approach to Clearview in general, looking at, you know, the drafting the recreation program and service development framework to ensure that program provision is aligned with community priorities and meets standardized performance criteria. So we will be looking at those, you know, perhaps underserved neighborhoods and looking to expand programming, you know, within the facilities that exist now. So probably looking at those school facilities.
Thank you for that. And so my last question on this is just, the library is unavailable until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I believe is the time. And I think we've all learned a lesson that that's not the model going forward. And I thank Tara for her leadership on that. It is a space constraint in and of itself. You can't, you know, you cannot offer the kinds of services because of the physical nature of that library. So I appreciate that the library board and continuing echoing on this of we need to find how we support that community more. Has there been any discussion that the temporary 16-mile library building could be considered in Clearview?
Through you, Chair Knoll, we are bringing a report to the library board in Q1 with recommendations for their consideration around the temporary facility. We're still in the process of identifying what those options could be. We did take an initial report earlier this year, and the board did provide feedback about the different areas they would like for us to explore. I don't think anything is off the table at this point, and we continue to work with our partners in different town departments like planning to identify potential areas.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. We are on questions for Mr. Harris at this point. Councillor Giddings, you had some questions?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks for coming out, David. Hearing that talk about the library takes me back. I think I first met you at the Bookmobile on Kingsway, where James W. Hill is now located. Just wanted to clarify further to the Commissioner's comments. If the population of Midtown were a community that was being developed at this point, it would have qualified for a community center. There isn't a community center or 1.5 being installed in Midtown. As Oakville was growing, that population would have. Now, as you heard our consultant talk about, it will be a series of it'll be a hub and other features in the area. So I just wanted to clarify on that one.
Will there be a community center in Midtown?
No, there will be a community hub. There will be various alternatives, whether it, as the consultant said, it could be in the main floor of a building. There will be some parks and open space at a reduced level, thanks to revisions that municipalities face, but a hard community center, no.
Yeah, I think the problem that a lot of facilities are finding now is that where it used to be possible, for example, for me, I could drive out to Pickering and attend my Dragon Boat Club, but then traffic got worse and worse, so then I moved into Outer Harbor, other side of Toronto. Traffic still got worse and worse. Now I'm moving into Sunnybrook area, so it's getting to be a problem to get anywhere. I would talk about destination pools and things like that. It's going to be less and less interesting to people just to get there in the first place, because it doesn't make sense to drive an hour and a half or 3 hours to Pickering, for example, just for an hour and a half of paddling and then come back. Again, the same problem.
You'd be quicker to paddle to
Yeah,
Pickering.
exactly. I could.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, for your information. Our next delegate, clerk.
Next delegation is Katrina Indui.
Welcome. You have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Acting Mayor Knoll and councillors. Thank you for allowing me a little bit of time to speak. Again, my name is Katrina Indui. I'm the Executive Director of the Oakville Soccer Club. And personally, I would like to say I am in favor of everything in the plan that has to do with dogs. So just want to put that out there. I just want to start by saying that one of the most frequent questions we get, Oakville Soccer Club remains the largest amateur sports club in North America. And we get asked the question a lot of why or how does that happen? We had over 18,000 registrations last year, representing over 9,000 unique users, both indoor and outdoor, and are probably one of the, if not the largest user groups of recreational spaces, of gymnasiums, turf fields in Oakville. But people ask all the time, they say, you know, how in Oakville's not that big, and how do you have these players? And the answer is always, it's a soccer town, and we're very lucky, I think is the answer, and I think that's a result of the relationship that we have and the opportunities we've been afforded in this town, and living and existing in a facility affluent area that continues to invest efforts like this and into planning like this. So thank you to the council for your consideration, to staff for all your hard work, as well as the planning that goes into something like this. I won't take up much of your time tonight, and I don't have a lot of specific asks or specific things to say, other that we do support this plan, and a lot of the specific call-outs that the Crusaders had as well. Very quickly, item 3 in sport tourism. I believe that there's expanding opportunities in this space now. The Oakville Soccer Club has just acquired a League One license, which is a semi-professional license competing in Ontario, and League One has expanded across the country and is in various provinces, so there is national representation to be had there. Fingers crossed, assuming there's some wins in the books coming forward. And our vision for that and our merger with the Blue Devils has always been a bit of a Friday Night Lights type of attraction, where this could be I think there's an opportunity to make this a community-centric, not necessarily on a Friday night, but it might be on a Sunday afternoon, but to do this at town facilities with the town, engaging this invested membership we already have at the soccer club, but also the town as a whole. And I think sports tourism, that's very appealing, and we'd like to be a part of that conversation and help to support that. Item 6, expanding programming and helping to identify gaps in senior programming, e-sport, et cetera, within existing facilities with existing groups. That is something that we are interested in being a part of and helping to facilitate in something like that, especially daytime usage at Pine Glen and community centers or open spaces, as we know, is not always peak. And I think that's something that we are really, is part of our strategic plan as we grow. So I think there is opportunity and we support there. Item 33, indoor turf, is we are very, very lucky to be in a beautiful facility in the Pine Glen Soccer Center, and I have been to some facilities that house indoor turf that are not nearly as beautiful as ours, and I think the Oakville Soccer Club has invested a lot of time and a lot of our capital into ensuring it stays that way as well, but we owe the town our partnership for that. We recognize the demand of our friends in the community who also utilize indoor turf space and have a hard time getting time at Pine Glen. Our programs have also expanded, and we use external turf space to Pine Glen as well, sometimes even out of the city limits or the town limits, because our programs have grown. So the need for additional turf space, indoor turf space especially, is imperative, not just for Oakville Soccer Club, but for the community and for all of the youth user groups and adult user groups, for that matter, that have the opportunity to grow their programming and to utilize space to do that. So that is very important. Also want to cite the partnership framework in item 38 and working with existing partners. We are proud to be one of those partners, and we want to be a supportive partner that works in the interest of this community as a whole. Speaking to 49, sports field, lit fields. We are a big fan of both. Rectangular fields and ones that are lit. It helps to increase capacity. It does allow the opportunity to expand and build on the back of other programming for not only the Oakville Soccer Club, but again, these other user groups that would benefit from that. These types of facilities, I would never be meant to be for one group specific, and I think that working together and recognizing that there's opportunity to help each other leverage the need and grow in that space. And to that end, the sports field strategy of how sport opportunity and recreation grows as a whole within Oakville. So in long, over 5 minutes, the point is that we have asks to continue our partnership and to continue to strengthen the abundance that the town of Oakville offers, and the fact that we are a leader in recreation, we are a leader in youth sport in the province and in the country. We have clubs, not just Oakville Soccer Club, but Crusaders and other clubs that are modeling excellence. We are a little bit of we think we already are, and we can be a destination sports town. From a registration standpoint, I think we are, but also with the opportunities that we do have from the reach that we have provincially and nationally, I think there can be more growth and more opportunity there, and we want to be an important part of that growth and offer the insight that we can and continue to benefit from the investment that the town continues to make in these spaces, and that the town staff continue to make into these community groups, which I can't thank enough for staff that are in this room that have helped us out of a bind and fielded our frantic calls of gates not opening and all sorts of other fun stuff that they loved seeing our phone number pop up on their phone. So, and I do also want to mention that the World Cup comes to Canada in 2026, and the soccer continues to be one of the fastest growing sports in North America. It is the world's game. It is a beautiful game. It represents community, inclusivity. It looks like our town. It looks like our province. It looks like our country. It feels like it. It is a very safe place for everyone, and we strive to fulfill that. But we will see growth from that exponentially, and most clubs, I will confidently say, are not prepared to take on that growth and capitalize on that growth and engagement. I believe OSC is, and with the support of the town, we can continue to grow and prepare in that way. So we have our eye on the ball there, but we're grateful for the investment that this town continues to make. We ask for the continued investment and support this plan wholeheartedly for the good of the community as a whole. Yes, Oakville Soccer Club, and that is who I represent and where I work proudly every day. But for the community as a whole, because I believe OSC invests back heartily in the community through engagement and through events. and providing opportunities for residents. And we look forward to continuing to do that with your support and by supporting the town of Oakville into the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your information, Mrs. Indue, and we don't think there's any questions for you, so.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Appreciate
Have a
it.
nice night.
Next up, Madam Clerk.
The next delegation is Marianne Seminishin.
Welcome to council. You have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Acting Mayor and members of council. My name is Marianne Seminishin, and I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of the Oakville Pickleball Association. Did you know that pickleball is the fastest growing sport in North America, and that it has been played since its creation in 1965? The popularity of the sport in Canada commenced in British Columbia in the 70s and has been growing throughout the country ever since. According to a January 2023 report from Pickleball BC, there are over 1.37 million Canadians who are now playing pickleball, and that number continues to grow exponentially. Pickleball is more than a trend. It has become a viral sensation with millions of players worldwide. When looking at the phenomenal growth of this sport from a different perspective, we note that Oakville's 2012 master plan and the 2017 review of the master plan did not mention the sport of pickleball. The town of Oakville has been a leader in sports and recreation facilities in the GTHA for years. I'm sure that you would agree that the town has well-established plans for arenas, pools, libraries, fitness centers, and parks. But what we don't have is an established plan for racket sports. The Oakville Pickleball Association supports the master plan recommendation to immediately commence development of a racket sports strategy for the town of Oakville. It is anticipated that this strategy will produce a long-term sustainable delivery for tennis and pickleball facilities and their related services in Oakville. Pickleball players are proud residents of Oakville, and we want to ensure that Oakville does not fall further behind our neighbors in servicing this rapidly growing sports sector. There are varying projections for outdoor racket sports. The report from Pickleball BC and other sports groups indicate that tennis has gone through a period of decline and has recently been experiencing a steady growth in Canada, primarily for youth players. Meanwhile, the growth of pickleball has been exponential over the last few years, and there's no indication that this trend will change in the future. There are several factors contributing to the growing popularity of pickleball in Canada. Let me take a moment to share some of those with you. Number one is accessibility. Pickleball is easy to learn, making it accessible to players of all ages and skill levels. I personally have played with a very good 12-year-old girl and regularly play with an 88-year-old gentleman who is skilled and strategic in his game. The rules are simple, and the equipment required to play is minimal, making it an affordable sport to get into. There's a social aspect to pickleball. It's often played in doubles, which makes it a social sport that encourages teamwork and communication. Many players enjoy the social interaction and sense of community that comes from playing pickleball, making it a popular choice for those looking to stay active while connecting with others. There are health benefits from pickleball. It provides a great workout that improves cardiovascular health, builds muscle, and enhances agility. It's a low-impact sport, making it easier on the joints than sports like tennis or basketball, which is particularly appealing to older adults and those recovering from injuries. Pickleball can be played year-round. Here in Oakville, we play pickleball year-round, regardless of the weather. Yes, many have opted to play indoors when the weather becomes harsh, but that has become a challenge, trying to find an open spot in many of the programs that are being offered. But others, like myself, will bundle up and enjoy playing outdoors on a fresh, dry winter day. This flexibility of this sport is a significant draw to its growing popularity. The Oakville Pickleball Association is respective of other racket sports and does not in any way want to take anything away from tennis, as many of our players play both sports. However, we feel that a racket sports strategy will highlight and establish plans to develop new courts based on established projections for both sports. Today, tennis has a ratio of 1 court per 3,750 residents, while pickleball has a ratio of 1 court per 17,300 residents in Oakville. Using this data from the current master plan, it is apparent that tennis in Oakville is overserved, while pickleball is drastically underserved. We trust that an Oakville racket sports strategy will highlight this disproportionate use of court facilities and recommend a strategy plan to effectively meet the growing and changing needs and expectations of residents. The trend in North America is to establish pickleball hubs that can service the sport and provide opportunity for local associations and municipalities to bring tournaments to their local facilities. These tournaments offer significant economic advantages to a municipality as they can draw large numbers of participants and visitors to the events and substantial revenues to the town and local businesses. The added benefit of hubs is that they can be established around other sports facilities and away from residential areas where noise from pickleball can be an issue. We have noted and wish to highlight a number of opportunities that exist in the list of action items of the draft master plan. First, Action 79, Deerfield Golf Course. This deal is scheduled to expire in December of 2025. We believe that there is room and opportunity at this location to develop a pickleball hub with a minimum of 8 dedicated courts. As this hub is not within close proximity to any residences, there would be no issue of noise complaints, and the development of this hub would not impede or impact the golf course. Secondly, Kin Oak and Maple Grove arenas offer an opportunity to repurpose. There is an opportunity to repurpose these arenas for multi-purpose indoor sports, such as basketball, badminton, tennis, and pickleball, and in addition to other sports and community service and community activities. Third, the tennis courts at Glen Abbey require rehabilitation. This would be a perfect opportunity to convert these courts to up to 10 dedicated pickleball courts. This location has sufficient parking and is adjacent to the community center and not located in close proximity to any housing, so noise complaints from local residents would not be an issue. Fourthly, we would also suggest that the town have their consultants review the ratio of pickleball to tennis courts at North Park for future expansion to ensure that the ratio properly reflects today's trends. We appreciate that the present master plan was developed a number of years ago, and as noted, above trends are rapidly changing. We all need to strive to ensure that the limited land we have is utilized to the fullest. Over the past few years, the Oakville Pickleball Association has developed a great working relationship with Parks Director Chris Mark and his staff, working with them on the ongoing refurbishment projects and new outdoor projects. We have a number of ideas and proposals to share with the town, and we welcome the opportunity to work with the town and their consultants to develop the proposed racket sports strategy and see these projects come to fruition, an achievement that we can all be proud of. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your information. You have some questions. First up, we have Councillor Dudek.
Thank you very much for your delegation this evening, and I can attest it is a very, very growing sport. We, Councillor Chisholm and I have met with many of our constituents, who have been similar to what you were referencing, refurbishing existing courts to utilize to the best of our ability to pivot. And I'm so glad you acknowledged Chris Mark and his team, because they've done an excellent job of trying to facilitate that change until this plan came into being. So thank you for saying that. Just to give you a glimmer of hope, I have been working with a gentleman who is currently looking at opening a facility in Oakville. And so there are things afoot. It might be something that the town can collaborate with them, but certainly we're going to be on the map, just to reassure you that. Okay?
Great news. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much. I don't think there's any doubt that you've got the attention of all of council with respect to pickleball. It is a thing that I think every single one of us have been engaged with over the last few years. And the only question I have for you is Oakville Pickleball the largest pickleball organization in North America? Because it feels that way.
Through Acting Mayor Noel to Councillor Adams, no. No, there are pickleball associations and clubs, numerous, all over the province and all over the country, of various sizes.
Perhaps that's something to aspire to, and you can line up with the soccer club and the rugby club.
Definitely.
Thank you very much for your information. I think that's all your questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have any more delegations? Yes. Okay. So we come to that moment when we ask the audience, does anybody else have any information to pass on this evening? Going once, twice, 3 times, sold. Okay. Let's call up our consultant again, and we'll resume our questions. And fastest on the button was Councillor Hazard-Thiel. So Councillor Hazard-Thiel, you have the floor.
Thanks, through you, Acting Mayor Noel. So my other questions have been around a couple historical ways we've made decisions on parks, recs, and library master plans. And there was a passing of, in a previous council, of the phrase fair geographic distribution of community services. And I noted on page 44 of the report, you do reference equity in terms of distribution. But that principle doesn't seem to be embedded in a decision-making framework. And I'm wondering, is that something that you need us to move an amendment for? Is there a reason it's not there? I think the spirit of it is there, but the actual element of it being a critical part of the decision-making doesn't seem to be highlighted.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Acting Mayor. I can assure you that it is very much a key part of the overall decision-making criteria. Several of the, if you dive into especially some of the technical analysis, you'll see when we're looking at facility locations, facility needs, it is represented on there. You'll see mapping with theoretical catchment areas. You'll see reference particularly to park amenities around 1 playground for every 500 meters, basketball court, 1 kilometer, and so on. As you get into some of the larger facilities where they need a critical mass, we layer in more population-based metrics, so it's not the only thing there, but it is very much more maybe just captured under different language relative to equity and accessibility.
Okay, to me, that principle is one that really, I would have loved to have seen it in the actual document highlighted, but I take your point that we have measurements, et cetera, that address it. Just equity has to include geography and population, and population is often our operational efficiency. But if we're going to really be serious about complete communities, the ability to factor in those areas that will never have the higher number of populations. I wondered why it wasn't there, but I thank you for your answer. My other question is is around the distinction and clarity on between the library, culture, and community development services. So there's excellent information. I mean, you can recall every action number and get us to whatever page, and forgive us because at 500 pages, we're not going to get that quickly. But I'm wondering, is there further documents for what work is going to be done to clearly define what the library leads, what community development services do in regards to this plan, and then the culture plan that's coming? And it may very well be a commissioner question.
I would suggest, yes, through acting mayor, it's probably more of an implementation question if staff could maybe assist.
Through you, Acting Mayor, just to start from the library perspective, and we had conversations about, you're talking about the library in Midtown and the community hub, correct?
I'm just talking in general about, you know, when you read the action items in the library section, and then you look at some of the influences in the coordination between recreation and community development. And I totally admire the amount, we've come leaps and bounds in terms of how we coordinate it, but I'm not seeing it clearly defined who takes the lead on what elements of that coordination. And it does affect programming and services. And I just wondered if you could speak to that.
Sure, thanks for that clarification. Yeah, so the multiple departments, we work together quite collaboratively through all levels for our programming. But you are correct that we don't necessarily have a dedicated framework in place that clearly identifies where the library takes the lead, where recreation takes the lead, where parks takes the lead. And that is something that, based out of the complexity of some of these pieces to the plan, that we have talked about implementing next year once the new director comes in place.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And I'll just, my last question, I have others, but they're not critical to tonight. There was reference in the plan about the importance of the camps and the need for aquatic staff. And I'm concerned about, do we have a human resource strategy to increase youth leadership, to support the programming, the programs that we want to offer? It's not in this plan in terms of how are we going to deliver all of this wonderful programming and concepts when we have a diminishing amount of volunteers and a diminishing amount of youth volunteers being developed. So can you give me your thoughts on, can we deliver this, and do you have a strategy to help us do that?
Through you, Chair Knoll and Councillor Hassett-Thiel, I would expect no less than a really smart HR question from an HR expert. So at the heart of how we deliver our programs, we do rely exponentially on part-time staff. It is a model that's replicated in every recreation department across the province, frankly. We benefit from a very intentional recruitment process that develops staff who, in many cases, they're either entry-level staff, and the opportunity for us to engage those youth and to develop their skills and to bring them through as staff is a really critical way that we approach it. So we're a high-level youth engagement employer. We have a people strategy on a corporate level that speaks to how we attract and retain staff. But at the heart of it, I think what we offer is a very intentional approach to reaching out to schools, to universities, to colleges. Being a college town, it benefits us greatly. We provide exceptional training for the staff that come in through our program, so that becomes a really effective attractor to these youth who are coming in, because they're not just getting a job, but they're developing skills that are transferable and that allow them to continue building their skills. So I think your specific question is, like, what are you doing from a specific strategy standpoint? One is, it's at the core of how we recruit, and it's been a long-standing principle. We were impacted during COVID, and that was very much evident in terms of our ability to deliver. We have come out of that and have had a very robust bounce back in terms of our ability to recruit, train, and retain staff. I think our people strategy will help us in that endeavor. But at the heart of it, the fact that we continue to provide these great jobs for young people is really our best recruitment strategy for continuing to be able to provide these services. And I am a product myself of a kid that came up at 16 years old. It was my very first job, and here I am way too many years later, still working in the sector. And I think it is a principle that you will see repeated over and over again, and it's at the foundation of how we recruit, retain, and train our staff.
So thank you for that answer. And if I could just put in a request that we look at the number of, I'm going to say 12 to 16-year-old programming that exists, because I know that we had to increase it last year. We have to continually develop that pipeline. I totally concur with you that we've had great success and people grow, but I am very worried that we will see a diminishing number of young people if it's not very targeted, and it sounds like it is, so thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Xi, you're up next.
Thank you, Acting Mayor No. I have to say I'm really enjoying to reading this report. So thank you for taking all this our residents' feedback and suggestion into account. So to be a far north councillor, so I always advocate for more parks and trails and the dog parks as well. Chris knows that. So I'm very happy to see all this, a lot of priorities already put into this plan. Really appreciate your team's effort to making this vision a reality and helping us to build a better place for our next generation to live. So I do have several questions to clarify for the parks. So on action, first question talking about community gardens. So based on the survey, so we got so this community garden is ranked top 4 requirements, strong recommended from our survey. So for the action plan on page 89, so we have this priorities called high, and the timing is in short term, 2024 to 2033, but we don't have anything implementation, no. So would you to explain this for me, for this?
Through the acting mayor, if I could at least, I'll interpret the master plan, and then if Director Mark has anything to add to that. The plan itself is very supportive of additional community gardens. We know that as backyards shrink and become non-existent, and food affordability, food security concerns continue to rise, there's going to be a need for them. The recommendation does support additional spaces. The exact number is not laid out, in part because there's many ways to deliver on those opportunities, and we want to be able to, we want staff to be able to do the site-specific planning that's required for them. They do have impacts. They have to find always the right locations and sometimes the right partner, and so recommendation action number 72 speaks to those partnerships, the need to focus on new sites, and really to do this through the a review of the town's policy and how those sites are not only established, but how they're maintained moving forward. Right now, I think administration maintains and administers the program. There's other municipalities that are administering them in partnership with other agencies or organizations. Whether that's a model that would work here or not would be part of that review potentially.
Okay, the following question about the partnership. So what to refer to? So what kind of example we can learn from other municipalities?
There are different third-party, there tend to be nonprofit organizations that have an interest in food security and healthy communities and so on. So they can deliver, almost like a health unit, sort of adjunct, adjacent type of organization. They can deliver that in partnership, often, sometimes a little bit more easily with other volunteer networks. It can be challenging sometimes for municipalities to be the ones organizing and working with the volunteers. So other third parties have had success in doing that. Because there's a whole not-for-profit sector, whether it be places of worship, churches, schools, that really want to also align with us and provide space. They don't always need to be in town parks. They can be on other, community, quasi-public sort of lands as well.
Okay, thank you very much. The second question is about event parks. That's Action 75. So would you explain this event parks? So it's dedicated a minimum of 2 parks as the event park with a focus on North Oakville. So I'm just want to know what that event parks mean. So is that will be use existing park to build some more facilities like a stage or big shelter to cover or something, or we invent to do some build the brand new parks to fit this requirement for the event in the North Oakville for the people.
Yes. Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor. So Action 75 speaks to establishing a minimum of 2 event parks or parks categorized as event parks, largely in North Oakville. So these would be new parks that are, many of which are likely to come to you through your negotiated land agreement or other land purchase. So if you think of Coronation Park is a designated event park. Now, the new ones don't always need to be in a waterfront location. They don't always need to be that large or have the exact same makeup, but event parks would offer more open space. They would offer off-street parking. They would offer washrooms and electrical capabilities, and they would be in locations that can absorb that type of impact to have events going until 10 or 11 o'clock at night, whatever consistent with your bylaws. So it's hard to do that in a park that's focused, say, on sports fields. Those can always hold different events, but what we're talking about here are more community level, neighborhood to community level types of events. So just making sure that they have that opportunity to be designed with that purpose in mind, and then permitted for that purpose as well.
That's fantastic. That's the exact what the North people want to have, the event vendors, places gathering for all those celebrations, etc. In North Oakville. Okay, for the last one is for dog parks. So I noticed for dog park on Northeast, we will have a long-term plan for adding 1 more dog parks. That's happened in 2044 to 51. So based on the population growth in the northeast of Oakville, I believe this will be a little bit faster than expected. So I'm suggesting to be thinking about this in the midterm. Middle term is not like long term.
And through you, Acting Mayor, I think that's, we spoke, I think we heard staff speak as well to one of the ways that these master plans stay alive is having annual work plans that allow them to be flexible if through council direction, through public input, through other processes, if there's always a need for flexibility, especially in timing. It's key and central, and part of this plan also lays out and updates the North Oakville Park Distribution Plan. So you have lands that are coming to you. We want to make sure that those sites, when they are ready for development, absorb and respond to the needs of the community at that time. So timing of development, I think, is for many, especially the park elements that are easier to do. I'll say, at least from a cost perspective, that opportunity is there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Z. Can't speak. Councillor, what's wrong with my lips, my lisp? Councillor G, thank you very much. Next up, we have Councillor Nanda. I think you're muted. You are muted, in fact.
Sorry.
No problem. Try it again.
Okay. Thank you, through you, Acting Mayor. Thank you to the whole team for this comprehensive report. It's very detail-oriented, a lot of information, and a lot going on. My questions were around, I guess what Councillor Giddings was speaking to earlier about the community hubs. Up in the north, I did see one stat up there that we're looking at one point during build out, having 130,000 people in North Oakville. And so I think one of the most important points about that is, one, having our community hubs, but also having our community center. I did see that in the report, it said in the Joshua Meadow area that there would not be enough population to have a community center. My question was for the map that you had put up, number 6, for the Trafalgar urban south area. Do we have any lands identified for a community center there? Because I just, from my recollection of what that area looks like, I'm wondering where exactly we would be able to put a community center.
Through you, Acting Mayor, and thank you, Councillor. There's currently no land identified at this point in time, but that would be an item that is referred to capital budget, and there's a funding item within your long-term capital budget, I think, coming up in 2025-26. So it would be part of the town's land acquisition strategy to help identify that particular site.
Okay, and so the one in 2051 on north of, I think it's Trafalgar and Burnhamthorpe, are those lands that we would have at that point, or is that still like under IO or developers, or do we even know if that's something that we would be able to build out?
Again, through you, Acting Mayor, it would really be an item that's dealt with through the land acquisition strategy and identified as you get a little bit closer, but we know we need to get land well in advance of development. So it certainly is identified as a higher priority to secure those sites and at least have an opportunity to use them for such, and whether funding is different for community center land versus park land, and making sure that you're maximizing those funding sources.
So I think what my concern is, especially for the first one we talked about, number 6, is if it would actually come to fruition. And the issue with that is having that whole one side. I think the east side, the northeast, from 2021 to 2051 would have approximately 86,000 people. And if we can't get a community center or some type of community hub or something in there, that's going to be very problematic, because again, you would only have Iroquois to the south, or you would have 16 Mile and in between River Oaks. But if we can't get a community center where we have a population of 86,000, that alone should be almost 2 community centers. And so that's why having the library in the podium would be very important, and especially having more community rooms. And I think you touched upon this earlier. We have more ethnic communities up here in the north, and we have a lot of senior groups who are continuously looking for community rooms that they can, get together and then on top of that, we're talking about having a complete community, walkable communities, but we're making these community centers that are way too far for people to actually be able to get to. So I think we need to somehow sort of prioritize at some point, and maybe this is to staff or the commissioner, that if we're going to try to build out another community center there, that's got to be a priority too, because these were the numbers that I saw on your map. I saw Northwest 44,000 people and Northeast 86,000 people. And we're very grateful for having our 16 Mile sports complex that's coming up here. But I think we're going to have to prioritize. And that's why I was a little concerned about, has there been any, research into looking into land on the Trafalgar South side for an actual, community center, because all I see going up there are buildings. And so, but I don't think we can make a fulsome community center just within podiums either. So, that would be my request to staff, that we really look into what we're doing both on the community hub side and also community center, especially since it looks like we're gonna have a lot of population. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nanda. Next up, we have Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, through you, Acting Chair Noel. Just a question. I think it's probably best suited for staff. So, the idea around taking a look at the Brownie Athletic Complex and the surrounding lands to see how best we could optimize or enhance it. Would you rather look at that through this report that seems more like a fit to me, as opposed to a going through a staff report process? I'm open to either way, but just want to see what the best fit is.
Through you, Councillor Noel. Councillor McNeese, that would be preferable, because I think there'll be opportunities on that site, and we can take direction that the understanding is that you want a more wholesome review of that site as part of any work that's done on the site. And we can take that as direction and understanding of the scope you're looking for.
Okay, and I just want to add, I know some of the key points we heard from the consultant was, having ideas and projects that are grant ready, partnership ready. I know the province has a fund right now for those types of things. So this site is kind of screaming opportunity to me. So if you're agreeable and it's a good fit to include as you see fit to this, then I'd be okay with that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We have Councillor Ramirez up next.
Thanks so much. And kind of along the lines of that one, was there any discussion about a stadium going somewhere, like not a massive one, but a high school football one, or a League One size, like a 5,000? I know Sheridan has one, but again, they use that for just their players. And I'm not talking about anytime soon, but as we grow over the next 20, 30 years, there may be use for one. And if there's opportunities that come up, I know we like to have these kind of things somewhere in a plan on a shelf in case there's a federal government, a World Cup grant for these sorts of things. Did any conversation come up over the consultations about that?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Acting Mayor. There were no significant mentions of that coming up through our stakeholder consultations. However, it does fall in line with, sometimes we'll get specialized requests for specialized facilities that have either more of a sport tourism or a regional draw, and that's really, I think we've heard tonight a little bit about that's partly why we're supporting and recommending a sport tourism strategy that can help pull those things together and make sure that that strategy has a mind to not just what Oakville's needs and capacities are, but what about our neighboring municipalities, and making sure that everyone's in the proper lane and properly resourcing those.
Yeah, I mean, if we heard from the rugby club today, I'm sure they would love to be able to showcase something. We've heard from a number of organizations. We've got an eco park that I have no clue what's going to happen with that in the future up there. We've got, the Bronte Provincial Park on the other side is all asphalt from the highway all the way up to upper middle. So there's options out there, but if we don't have these things on the books, then I know the first thing we do is turn around and say it's not a part of the plan. So I don't know if we want to. Anyway, I know it's a little late in the game to start throwing things into the book here, but maybe through the sports tourism aspect, we can just be ready if an opportunity comes up, that we can say, yeah, we thought about that, we contemplated it, and if all the sort of blocks and pieces are lining up, we should go and do it, because I think that's what's going to make us a great town, city, village, region to be in, is if we have these places for a high school football team who goes to the provincial finals can do it in our hometown. I think that would be great. So, but yeah, well, I'll look for that in the sports strategy then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazelfield, for a second time.
Through Acting Mayor Noel, sorry, I just wanted to have one concluding kind of understanding. So this is a phenomenal report, and the complexity is significant, and the layering of priorities and the capital dollars that each of those priorities will take, I think we all appreciate is a big ask. And earlier on, I heard a comment that it's within our capabilities to achieve this. Could staff maybe just recap when will we have those prioritizing discussions and a more detailed look at the capital costs of these projects? I'd like to have some clarity because in principle, everything is aspirational. I think there's been some additional comments tonight that are beneficial. But the dollars and cents and the timing and, you know, what comes first, I just would like it to be clearer for my peace of mind.
I think that's a question for me, through you, Chair Councillor, through you, Chair Knoll. Sorry, it's getting late in the evening. I understand exactly what you're looking for, Councillor Haslett-Theo, and I think the best approach is for us to bring a report back to Council that outlines our thoughts on a work plan in terms of the short-term priorities. I think the plan itself does a very good job in outlining triggers and milestones that kind of kick in that longer-term work. But if I'm understanding your question more clearly, there are a bunch of short-term priorities, and I think your question to us is, what comes first? How are you going to prioritize, and how are you going to manage it? And I think the best way to do that is to bring back a report to this council that outlines that, and so we can take that as direction. We'll put some thought around it, talk to our partners in finance as well, and give you some clarity in what we think the sequencing looks like. I think that's the best way to approach that.
Commissioner, so glad you're on board. You're a gem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have just a couple minor, most everything got picked up by others, but I would like to know, and Councillor O'Meara raised it earlier, what is the current status of the Eco Park? I know that there's some reference to potentially putting a refrigerated skating park, I believe, in there, but is there anything else on the books for this at this point? Any other plans, or when we might expect to hear an update?
Through you, Acting Mayor Knoll, we are looking in 2025 to undertake some visioning and some planning for the park. There's lots of opportunity there, and we want to come back to council with a fulsome plan of how we see the park evolving and partnerships that are available. So we definitely, we're also coming back with the event study as well. That's probably part of it as well, but we definitely do need to look at the park on its own and come back with a plan that we can bring to council and share with you and get your comments and feedback.
So that's expected in 2025?
Yes, sir.
Is there any opportunity for council to be taken on a tour of the Eco Park? I mean, we bought this and we were all excited about it at the time, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind at the moment. Maybe part of the visioning plan might be for us to actually see what's up there. I've just seen it in aerial photos at this point.
Would be more than happy to take council on a tour. Getting late this year, but probably something we should look at for the spring.
Well, you could issue us all snowshoes, I guess. That would be good. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. We look forward to that report, and I for one would like to have a tour of the site. In terms of, one of the recommendations was improving access to Bronte Provincial Park. I'm just curious, how exactly do you do that when it's not our facility? What do you have? What did you actually mean by there? What do you have in mind there?
I think Councillor Knoll, you heard earlier, it's a resource in the community, and what we often hear from the public is they don't always look at things as, oh, it's a town property, it's a YMCA, it's a school. They see it as public, and there are other examples of, to take that offline and think through that a little bit more, but there's some softer partnerships that the province has entered into with local municipalities to program the sites, use them as event parks for key events. I know there's one in Pickering right now that it's not so much a provincial park, but it's a conservation authority. If you think of them as similar, although they have certainly different bureaucratic challenges, where that partnership is becoming much stronger, and because there's a need to reinvest in that site, and funding is different depending on your depending on the operator. So it's more a matter of just making sure that remains available to as a general resource to the public, that as you look to, heard suggestions earlier about if we need more of this, maybe this is an opportunity, even if it's not lands that are owned by the town.
I'll be very interested to see how that all moves along, because I don't think we've had a lot of success working with Bronte in all the years I've been here. So it would be certainly interesting to see how that manifests. My other notes here. I'm really happy to see that you mentioned the tennis courts as Sunningdale School as part of that piece. So thank you for specifically mentioning and calling that out. Councillor Grant and I know have been working on that for a while now, and we're very enthusiastic to see that come to pass. I don't know if you've had any experience in this area, but there's been lots of talk about working with schools and those facilities that are available in the evening. I know we permit them right now, but I think back to the days I lived in Etobicoke, and Etobicoke School Board and the City of Etobicoke had this wonderful community school partnership where they would joint own facilities or joint managed facilities. I don't know what the ownership model was, but basically after 6 it belonged to the town, or I think it was maybe even after 5 or 4:30 it belonged to the city. And they programmed it with the Parks and Rec department, whether it would be lessons or whatever the case is. Did you look at that as a model when you were doing your recommendations? And frankly, is it a successful model? I don't know enough about that field to know how that works. I know other communities have it as well.
There are differing views on the success of the model, and as is often the case with partnerships, they work well for a time until they don't. And I know the challenge in Toronto with their community schools has been, they get established with the right intentions, and when the community's young, it works out well and the infrastructure is new. But as the infrastructure ages and then the funding models start to shift, it becomes very difficult. So with any partnership, you always want a balance of risk. The municipality shouldn't be absorbing too much or too little. And when that gets out of whack, it becomes a challenge. And I know that's what's happening with some of the older centers. There are communities, Vaughan has one, it's a high school, Valour Village community center. They get shared use of gymnasiums, and then there's also some other spaces. They have a pool. They can work. What I would say is your reciprocal use or your permitting of schools is among the best that we've seen in Ontario as far as that model goes. The fact that the permitting flows through your town and the core users as opposed to going through the school board. There are many municipalities that would much prefer to have that model and look at you with great success there.
I think that based on the chattering I'm hearing from Councillor Chisholm, that he may be in a position to take a bow on that one.
Yes, a little bit of credit. This is going back many years ago with the 4 municipalities in the region got together with the Halton District School Board and the Halton Catholic District School Board. And we worked on it, and we didn't have, no disrespect to consultants, but we did it in-house, the 4 municipalities, and it took us about 1.5 years to put it together because it was very detailed. And we're very proud of the reciprocal agreement that we've put in place, and I'm glad it's still going. Aside from that, so clarity with respect to community use of schools and community schools. And Councillor Noah reminds me, back in the 70s and 80s, the province was putting money to municipalities for community use of schools. So share the facility, half and half. And we did have a couple pilots here in Oakville, and Fargowood School was one, and Queen Elizabeth Park High School was the other one. They were limited in success. There were some challenges with respect to who had authorities and so forth. So, but the community use of schools is very good for the town of Oakville and has been very successful. So I'll just leave it as that for clarity.
Thank you for adding that, Councillor Chisholm. I guess what I'm hearing is that it's the challenge in this area is more the administration and the CapEx planning around those facilities, and not so much about the delivery of services. Is that accurate? The service delivery, because I know when I lived in Etobicoke, we took great advantage of. I think it's called Sir Adam Beck School. Maybe it's John.
Definitely, and those are still within the city's inventory. They're programmed, but you're right. You're absolutely right. Policies change, and if they don't change on both sides equally, that's another layer of challenge.
Okay, thank you for that. I see that we've scared up another question here. Councillor Elgar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Councillor Knoll. Yeah, I know it's late in the evening, but just one little thing. Back in the OPA 198 days, there was a negotiation with the Conservation Hall because the province didn't want to give the land to the town, so they gave it to Conservation Hall as a 20-year agreement to develop a passive Glen Orkey Park. Very little has happened. I know there's been huge issues up there because of maybe people that shouldn't be using it, and there's been a lot of things. But is town staff working at all with Conservation Halton to see about using that as passive parkland? It's an extremely big tract of land. And are we doing anything at the town with regard to that with Conservation Halton?
Through you, Councillor Knoll, it is actually one of your strategic plan requirements is to look at opportunities for the Glen Orkey piece. We have had very early discussions with Conservation Halton in terms of, and the region in terms of what are the opportunities. The lease itself, as you said, was a 20-year lease, and we're actually coming close to the end of that lease. So that's really the first priority, is to, very similar to the discussion with the Crusaders, is to sort out the land ownership so that we can then really look at a plan that can focus on using those lands for what conservation, because Conservation Halton does a whole management plan. But until we actually secure the ownership of the lands or a longer term agreement with the province, to move towards that plan would be very difficult. So it is part of your strategic plan. We had discussions quite some time ago. We should actually renew those discussions with Conservation Halton and the region. I think all three of us parties would be important to resolve it.
To UCAO, I really appreciate that, because I think we're talking, getting old, but I think it was 2007. I think it was 20-year lease. So 2027 isn't that far away when I see everything else we're doing is 2051. So I'd say that's kind of a short-term issue that we should deal with now, if we could. So if we can get that on the plate, I'd really appreciate it to get moving on it, because as you well know, that the provincial government over the last 20 years has pretty well cut all the funding coming from the province to the conservation authority. So it's not easy to do what they wanted to do either, and it's getting harder every year. So appreciate that. I look forward to the report back. Thanks. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor. Sounds like a Three Stooges routine. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, that's great. I don't see any further questions at this time, so I want to thank Mr. Langlois for an excellent report and an excellent presentation tonight. Thank you for your work. We really appreciate it. And thank you to Council for all the great feedback as well. We have a motion that we need to address, and that is, you'll see that in your report. It's a 4-point motion. I think the Mayor was suggesting that if you have specific pet projects, that you bring it back in the form of a request report later. I think that makes really good sense. Give it some thought, and we can facilitate it that way, unless you really want to amend this motion. But otherwise, I have a motion here, and I'm looking for somebody to move it. It's Tom Adams and Councillor G. Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff, as well, for the wonderful work on that. We've already passed 5.2, which is the Community Activation Grant matter. We have no confidential discussion items. I need a motion for the consideration and reading of the bylaws. Thank you, Councillor Lischina and Councillor Nanda. All in favor? That is carried. We only have the one bylaw, 7.1, which is just the procedural bylaw. Yeah. So that's concluding the business for today. I want to thank everybody for their time and attention. The election in the United States seems to be going according to what everybody was predicting at this point. So we'll all run home and see how that turns out. So with that, this meeting is adjourned. And once again, I'll thank you for your information this evening.